All right, we're live. Welcome, everybody. We're just kind of doing an impromptu show. So, Eric, M Squared down there, and myself, we're kind of voluntoed to possibly, I guess you call it voluntold. Anyway, we volunteered to do the Let's Go Fishing show in Collinsville. We're just going to speak for, I guess, an hour, and it's on the Friday at 5 o'clock time slot. So,
Yeah.
we kind of scheduled a meeting for tonight, and we thought we would just jump on a live stream and see if anybody shows up to give us some ideas on topics, and we're just going to hash it out and have no idea what to expect. But we just thought it'd be cool to just throw it out there, and if people want to get involved, they're not doing anything on a cold, dreary Thursday night, they can jump on here and just share some topic ideas. We got one person on, so yeah, looking
Already
good.
nice. The power of the 10-horse Monty.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't had a chance to like pull up the actual, do they have online like the seminars and who's going to be in them? And
I'm not sure they have. Do they have it already, Eric?
I seen somebody shared a link to it, and I did see it on Facebook.
Okay.
I don't know if it had just my name on the 5 o'clock spot, but I don't know if they've updated it yet, and added you guys on. But I did see they had it out, at least a preliminary.
You did a forward-facing seminar last year, didn't you?
Yeah, I did one there, and I did one at the Marion show.
At the Marion show, because I remember that. And then you got a guide trip out of the Marion one, didn't you? That day, not a guide trip, but take them out and teach them how to use their garment. Yeah.
I actually left there, went straight to Wren Lake, and did a electronics class on the live scope for the guy that's one of the guys that sat in on the seminar, and he loved it. At that area of Wren I'd never been on in my life. We met at the ramp, jumped on, I dialed his stuff in. He didn't even fish that area. We scanned around real quick, found some brush, dropped in and literally caught fish on the spot. He was stoked. It was pretty sweet.
That is pretty sweet. Were you catching crappie?
Yeah. And I talked him through it, showed him, how I do it. And probably did that for about an hour, and I caught several fish, and I tried to get up out of the seat and let him in. And he's like, no, he said, I'm learning more by watching you. You just keep working. He said, I'm picking it up. So I said, okay. It was pretty cool.
When you said that, it reminded me of I fished the Elite Series, or I fished it the last year you could fish as a co-angler. The following year was the first year they had the Marshalls, and I did 4 of them, and I learned so much more than I did when I was fishing because I was busy trying to catch fish.
Yep.
When I could just sit there and sip on a coffee and watch them, and then obviously the guys are a lot more loose-lipped with what they're doing when you're not catching fish out of the back of their boat.
Right.
It's
to me, it's very enjoyable to sit back and watch somebody work that's good at what they do.
Oh, yeah.
I don't care how many fish I've caught. It doesn't matter. Like I could sit next to somebody or sit in the back of the boat and watch them work. And if they're good at what they do, I can literally watch them for hours and not even fish. I love it.
Yeah. Heck, I've always said you can learn what not to do from somebody that's not that great.
Yeah, you can do that too.
Yeah. What you got there, Gabe? The schedule whale?
Yeah, it looks like
man, the live stream is getting fancy since the last time I'm on. We got
I upgraded.
Stuff. Yeah,
I did some upgrading.
Looks good.
Thanks.
Yeah,
man.
It does. It looks real good.
Yeah, I got the instead of having the free version of StreamYard, I went ahead and upgraded and got the paid version of it. But you can do a lot of things with it. You can obviously the background screen's a little bit different. You can record the audio. So I'm gonna do this in a podcast form eventually. I just got to get around to setting it up so people can just, if they don't have the, a lot of times you're driving kind of off the grid slightly, and if you're trying to watch a video, it cuts out. But the podcast, if you're on Spotify or something, it's just audio version and it streams a little bit better. So that'll give people the option to have that going. I just got to get it all set up, and it just takes a little bit of time. But yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. It's
reasonable for the paid version.
Yeah, it's like $35 a month.
That ain't too bad. For as many as you do, that's definitely worth it.
Yeah, and then instead of having 720p on the camera, I jump up to 1080, which is HD, so it cleans up the image a little bit better.
Probably could back it down for me and Eric, but yeah, whatever. The beard covers up most of the mishaps. So
we all got radio faces for sure.
That's right.
I agree with that.
Let's see here.
I'm not tech savvy at all either. I spend too much time on the water, not enough in front of the screen.
That's right. That's where it matters, man.
Yes,
out
sir.
On the water.
When you say voluntold, it's really hard to not do something for Mark McMurray when he asks.
Oh yeah,
yeah, it is.
Yeah,
sure. Me and him are doing. I'm going over to do that high school fishing thing at Vianney on Saturday, where they're having all the high school teams in there and a bunch of speakers. I think Trey McKinney's speaking.
Yeah, Trey and Drew Gill's going to be there.
Yeah,
Brock Bila, Pete Winters is going to be there.
Pete Winters is going to be there.
Yeah.
No, his thing. I totally forgot Pete fished the Elite Series for a while.
Yeah, I guess I didn't. I forgot that too. Huh.
I mean, it's been years and years ago, but
I'm trying to look at some of these. So they got you down. 5 o'clock spot. Talking about
who else we got? Polinick back. He's there about every year.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, Polinick, you're right. He's coming on after us. Yeah.
That's going to be a hard act to follow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's going to be nervous, man, after we come on stage.
Yeah.
That's funny.
He's such a nice dude, too. I spent a lot of time talking to him at that show, and he's a great guy.
Yeah, I might hit him up to see if he wants to come on the live stream sometime.
There you go.
Great opportunity to kind of bump elbows with some of those dudes.
Mm-hmm.
His content that he puts out is top notch.
Oh yeah,
BMP, whatever it is.
Yeah, well, he's just he's got a really good camera crew. I mean, you look at Scott Martin.
Yeah, they got the guys editing. They got a whole production team.
Right. They have a lot of cameras, and that's why it's so good. Each one of those videos has probably got several hundred hours of editing time on it.
Oh yeah, and the amount of footage that's not used has got to be staggering.
Yeah,
they got the drone stuff going. They got
it's cool how they do all that, but it is so much work. I mean, like you said, they got a whole team. I've had people ask me about why I didn't do some of that stuff and film some of the stuff on our fishing adventures, we call them, and it's just, I mean,
you can't fish.
Well, I don't have any time left over at the end of the day. There's no editing. There's none of that for me. I mean, I don't even get time to sit and watch the television. I mean, I'm on the go all the time. So
yeah. People ask me that too, and I'm like, I watch Gabe. I know how much time he puts in when the camera's not on.
Yeah, you're right. It's a lot of work, and I get burnout. I've been getting a little burnout on it some, and I'll just take take some time off because you got to be on top of it. It's like you try to basically since I'm doing a Tuesday night live stream and then dropping content on Wednesdays and Fridays. I basically get Friday and Saturday off to not really work on stuff if I don't want to, but then Sunday I got to start after it again and work on it Sunday and Monday to get it ready because Tuesday I don't have any time because I'm working and then I'm going to come home in the evening. So I'm doing the live stream. So that Sunday and Monday, that editing time goes towards the Wednesday video. And then as soon as the Wednesday video drops, that Wednesday night, I got to start on the Friday video and then have it ready to upload stuff by after work on Thursday so I can drop it on Friday morning. It's just, that's the process. It never quits. If I slack off on one of those little time slots, then it just doesn't happen. And then, you're out on the water too, in between those times, trying to create content and catching fish and come up with a somewhat interesting topic and just keep it mixed up instead of doing the same thing. I mean, if I could go out every time and just throw a jig head minnow on a live scope and catch fish, no problem. But people don't
bored with that.
People get tired of seeing that. And, part of the having this YouTube channel is, I want to create content for, Cumberland Pro Lures and Bill Lewis and these companies that I'm working with, but I also want to try to make something that's interesting and not the same stuff over and over. So a lot of times I find myself doing the less opportune thing. There's obvious patterns that are going on, but I've already released like 2 jig fishing videos this month, and I love fishing a jig. And there's a lot of times where I think you can catch a fish on a jig or a jig head minnow or a shaky head. That's going to be the technique that's probably going to give me the optimal amount of bites, but I've already created that kind of content. So I'm trying to branch out, and it's fun too, because it does challenge you. It challenges you to try to catch fish outside of the obvious pattern, and it doesn't always work out. A lot of times it doesn't work out, but at least you're experimenting, because that's kind of what, when we started fishing years and years and years ago, that it was an experiment. We didn't really know what was going to work and what wasn't going to work, and you kind of lose that when you fish the same thing over and over. You lose a little bit of that, just that mystery, I guess, just kind of exploring and trying different baits and different techniques and stuff. So that's one thing about this channel that's kept me. I mean, dude, my John boat's about to sink because I got so much crap in there, because I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll go out and use this one day, and I'll go out and use that one day, and I need to take a bunch of stuff out of there. But as soon as I do, I'll get out there and I'm like, oh, this might be a good day to do a video on a Yamacinco or something. And I took them out of my boat and they're not there, and I'm sitting there looking. I spent 15 minutes trying to find them, and I'm like, you know what? I took those suckers out of there because I didn't use them the last couple months, and now I need them. And so I just end up piling stuff in the boat. But
you need to get you a system set up so everything's in your truck where you can get it.
Yeah.
It's right there at the boat ramp. You could go back and get it.
Yeah, Tom, I'll try to get calling it. I'll definitely try to talk to him. Mario, it's the Let's Go Fishing Show in Collinsville, Illinois. And I think it's the first, well, it's right here. The first weekend in January. Right? Yep. Yeah. And we're going to
3rd, 4th, and 5th, I believe.
Yeah. So we are scheduled to speak Friday the 3rd at 5 p.m. So this Eric Morey, who's the guy that's on the other end of the camera there, Mike Marfell and Gabe Montgomery will be up there with him. So that's kind of what we're trying to do, is going to get a few.
So we're trying to come up with a topic. I was thinking about winter strategies. That's the first thing that hit me since, or early pre-spawn, because that's the first thing people are going to be doing coming out of this seminar. But, out of the Let's Go Fishing Show. It's funny because a lot of people always don't think you can go catch bass in January. Well, that's not true at all. They still eat.
Not at all. It's all about the bait. Bass,
it's all about you. You being tough enough to stay warm.
It is, but it's all about the bait. I mean, the bait's lethargic, so the fish slow down. I mean, the fish are going to eat. I mean, they follow the bait. They live by the bait.
Yeah.
Finley wants in.
Finley wants in. The other at Lake of the Ozarks, a lot of times, Eric, it's about the type of rock and the cut. The stuff the big rock that's kind of dark. I call it lava rock. Mm-hmm. That's facing the right direction, that gets the most sun. Yeah. You find an area there that's got a deep spot next to that, they'll stay suspended, and then they'll just slide up onto that rock where it's a little warmer and eat. And slide right back to the deeper water. So
yeah, I
like it because when you got to cover water and fish fast. I'm not fast, but you got to cover water and fish slow.
Right.
So you got to pick your.
And then that's tricky.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
And I mean, like I was talking to some guys. They had an upcoming tournament on actually on Newton Lake, and this was about a year ago. And I had just happened to be there a little bit before that, and the jig bite was phenomenal. But the water was up a little bit. We were pitching a jig back into the bases of the weeds, the thick reeds. They got the big pods at the base where all the reeds come out of, but you got little holes behind them. Every bite came from the back of those to 2 foot out off the end of them. If you didn't get bit there, you could fish that jig 100 feet. They weren't there. And I was explaining to them how I power fish a jig. And they're like, how do you power fish a jig? And I said, when you get on a pattern, you figure out where that bite's at. You can push the boat up to 25, 30 feet off the bank, make short pitches, fish those 4 feet of water, and then burn it in, move over a foot of the next opening, pitch it in, and do it again. And they did exactly that and did really well in the tournament. My buddy called me after that, and he said it was crazy. He said they initially tried to fish the jig all the way back to the boat, and they got no bites. They said every bite was the first 4 feet. And
that makes sense.
And he said if they would have started sooner, just fishing that zone, he said they would have even maybe even won, but they did pretty good, you know.
What do you think was holding them there? Is it those reeds holding a little warmer?
At that time,
or the bait just up there?
It was pre-spawn. I mean, they were starting to push up, but the water had came up a little bit and put water back in those reeds when it hadn't been there, and it put the bait fish in there and drove those bass right in there too.
Yeah. That's like Table Rock and Bull Shoals. When that water gets up in that buckbrush, it may take them a day or two to move up there, but they'll get up there. They love to be in that stuff.
Yeah, once they figure out that's where the bait went, and that's what the bait does right off the bat. When they figure out that's what the bait does, like you said, it take a day or two, but they'll follow. They'll be right up in there.
Yeah. What's crazy at Table Rock is or Bull Shoals, it is so freaking clear. And you would think you could see a fish setting on that bush in a foot of water or less. And you pitch in there and your line just goes sideways. I'm like, how? Mm-hmm. That tells you how good at hiding, how good of a predator those large and smallmouth can be. Absolutely. You know, they blend right in. It's crazy.
You know, Gabe,
go ahead, Eric.
You was talking a little bit ago about all the stuff in your boat and taking things out of the boat. It had clicked on something with me quite a few years ago. I had never fished crankbaits a whole lot. You know, I was a spinnerbait guy, worm guy, jig guy, and I wanted to learn to efficiently fish crankbaits. And I would throw them in the boat, and I'd go to the lake, and I would find myself not fishing them because I knew all this other stuff that was working good. I had to take every bit of the rest of my gear out of the boat and leave it at home and only take my crankbaits. And I did that. I did that for a couple months. I mean, religiously. And I forced myself to learn how to fish a crankbait efficiently. And awesome. even when I tell people that, a lot of people, and mainly the guys that are not on the level that we fish, they don't even understand that. Like, what do you mean learn how to fish a crankbait? It's a crankbait. You cast it out, you reel it in. Absolutely not, you know.
There's so many intricacies to a crankbait.
Oh, yeah. And different sizes, depths, even
line
brands.
Size.
Yes, that's very important. The material they're made out of for different times a year. I mean,
yeah.
It's just, it's crazy. There's so much to learn there. And when you start talking about it, you know, and explain it like that, then everybody, their face lights up. They're like, I had no idea, you know, like,
yeah,
there's so much to this. I mean, it could be as simple as going to Walmart and grabbing a few lures and hitting the lake and catching a few fish, or trying to work it down to a science where you can go to the lake almost any time throughout the year and get on a pattern. And for me, that's where it's at.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had Drew Gill on. Drew Gill was on the stream Tuesday night, and he's so analytical. It's amazing how he processes the tournament fishing side of things, how everything is calculated down to the nth degree. And it's amazing to hear somebody who's, I mean, he's, you know, I started calling him the professor because he's just like he's a professor of bass fishing. He's just got it down to a science, and everything. There's a reason that he does everything that he does. It's all calculated. It's bite to land ratio. It's, you know, he's fishing the BPT, which is every fish counts format. So they're trying to catch as many fish as they can. So he's constantly I guess all those guys are constantly trying to figure out what is the most efficient way to catch the most fish in the shortest amount of time, and the hook up to landing ratio is the cleanest. And then obviously you're wanting to, you're wanting to have things that, if you can eliminate like a treble hook bait to a single hook bait, that's going to increase your odds of getting the fish in the boat. Then there's also like some of the baits, the fish is going to jump off in the boat, and then there's a 2-minute penalty. So their mindset, especially Drew's and some of the other guys on in the professional world, but that's how they think. They're like, everything is like so precisely thought about. And then there's also people, like you said, Eric, that can just go to Walmart and just buy a pack of like 7-inch, like a 5-inch Cinco with a 5/0 hook and a 1/4 ounce lead weight, and just go fishing and just have a ton of fun. So that's the beauty of fishing, is it's like you can go everything in between. I mean, you can have somebody like in music that goes to the pawn shop and buys a beat up $50 acoustic guitar with tarnished strings on it. And then there's guys that have a pedal board that weighs 200 pounds. And when you plug it in, the lights dim because it's drawing so much current, and they've got, a $6,000-7,000 gold top Les Paul, and they just take it. They take it that way. Just everything in between. I think that applies.
I've always said that bass fishing and playing guitar and chest are like the same thing. There's only so many moves you can do, but you can spend a lifetime trying to perfect them all.
Yeah, you'll never master it. It's unmasterable. And especially like you, Eric, where I'm pretty much, I'd say Mike and we're primarily bass fishermen.
If I catch something else, it was on accident.
Trout would be my second favorite.
Except for crappie. Occasionally, I want to go make a sandwich, but
yeah. And I'm leaning, and I'm starting to get into crappie. But you're fishing for a lot of different species. Especially guiding. You have to be able to offer a variety of species for your clients, anywhere from bass fishing to stripers and whites, crappie, catfish. So that's pretty cool too.
I'm going to do muskies.
Are you cool?
Also, yep. And it's tricky. It's tricky because there's no one body of water you can do all that business on. So,
right.
I got, and I work a full-time job. So, for me to be able to do that many different species on that many different bodies of water, I mean, there's no downtime. When I'm not working, if I don't have a trip or whatever, I've got to be hitting the water to figure out what's going on at each body of water. I mean, I sometimes literally I will fish 2 or 3 lakes in the same day. And I'll, like this time of year, I'll have posts on there. You'll see them later this winter where I will hit multiple lakes the same day and pull limits of fish out. And it's a lot of work, and it's almost too much to do that many species, but I love to catch the different stuff. And I know I get hit up all the time by people that, hey, I would love to get on them stripers, or man, a muskie is my dream. And I'm like, yeah, I can help you out. We'll get you on one. But it's down to the science part of it is when I'm out there, like I fish the Mississippi River a lot for the whites and the hybrid stripers, and you catch so many bonus species while you're doing this that you have an amazing day. But I spent a year hitting it hard, and I keep a logbook on weather conditions, water levels, current levels. You have to keep everything, like what lure, what areas. I have so many different. I have a whole logbook now. I can look back at it, and if the level is 10 foot and they got the gates halfway open, like I know right where I need to go. I can look at the weather conditions or morning or evening, I log all that stuff in, and in the long run, it helps me out. And I've done the same thing with largemouth, with crappie. I mean, when I'm learning something new, especially, I write everything down. I keep a logbook, and I want to be able to go back to it. And then it's helped so much because I can, when it comes to doing the multi-species, I cannot be there for a month, 2 months, even like the muskies, 6 months. And I can look back at my book and I can say, okay, here's what I need to do. And I can make a run out of the blue and have a very good chance of getting on fish.
That's a good
to
idea,
me,
man.
that stuff is huge.
Man,
Yeah.
I wish I'd have done that years ago. Started that. I used to think when I was younger, my memory was good enough, but now I realize it is not.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's exactly what I was going to say. You can't remember that stuff.
You can't. You even if you just bass fish, the level at which you guys are fishing, I mean, you fish a lot. You fish too much in too many different places to store that. You can't.
Yeah.
I know I couldn't do it. It was way too much. I was overloaded, and I just started writing everything down, and it made a huge difference, and it's really beneficial for me now. Like I said, doing the multi-species on multiple lakes, it doesn't matter if I want to run to the river or run to one of my lakes and go fish for blue cat, or if I want to try to hit the largemouth or go to multiple lakes crappie fishing. I have a very good shot at doing good because of all the research and all the info I kept. That is just, it's been phenomenal.
I used to do that all the time, Eric. Years ago, when I first started fishing, I would create I had a log, and I would keep that log up to date every time I'd go fishing.
Yep.
I would write down. It was detailed too. I mean,
oh yeah,
everything I caught. I caught 3 fish on a purple with a pink firetail worm, and then every single lure.
What I'm talking about.
Yeah, it is cool. I still have those. Years ago, Bassmaster, every year they would send you, just a log type of book. It had a soft,
that was
your
hardcover signed up
diary type of thing, and I would keep.
Mm-hmm.
I had that for like 3. I've still got them in there, like 3 or 4, 5 years worth of that stuff, and I go back and look at them, and it was pretty detailed. And I was bank fishing. This is all off the bank. I just go to these little subdivision ponds around the house, but I'd write it down every time. And I remember that being an integral part of my trip. Like right after I got back or in the truck or whenever, I would sit down and make sure that I documented everything that went on. And I
do it while it's fresh.
Yep. Next year I'd kind of look in it. I didn't really know what the water temperature was, but I could write down like the conditions, the water clarity, the wind, the air temperature, if it was windy,
barometric pressure
kind of stuff. Yeah.
I write the barometric pressure down for every bit of it too. I mean, I log all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Dale's on here. Yeah. We'll just kind of jump on here. We're going to be talking at a boat show / fishing show, and
the Let's Go Fishing Show, the best fishing show in the whole area.
Let's Go Fishing Show in Collinsville, Illinois. So we decided we'll just jump on here and just kind of hash some things out, and people can come in and out and leave some topics. That's kind of one of the things I was hoping people would do is shoot some ideals down there in the comment section. What are some things that you feel like are good topics to talk about at a sports show? Maybe some things that you've heard at other ones that need to be repeated, or some things that are kind of
things you've never heard that you want to hear.
never heard, or you want more information about, because between the three of us,
specific species even.
Yeah. So if anybody out there that's watching, if you got any ideas, Dale, I just sent you a link to the live stream too. If you want to jump on here, come on in. I was kind of wondering what the heck's going on with Bull Shoals Lake. I don't know if you guys seen any pictures of Bull Shoals, but it's the sucker was all the way filled up to the rim recently. It's funny because I saw some pictures on Facebook, and I've been down there a couple of years fishing with Dale on Bull Shoals, and the times I've been down there, the lake was probably at normal pool, but you drive around the Bull Shoals boat dock, and you can see down the water's. It's 30 feet down. You got all this.
You can see 50 feet down there.
Yeah, it's what I mean. Not the actual.
If you get high enough, if you're up like on one of those houseboats.
Yeah, you can. I mean, the water level is you're 30 to 40 feet above the water level driving around, and and then in those pictures recently, the water is right up to the road almost. So it's come up that far, and it's hard to it messes with your mind. You're looking at it and you're like, is that the same place? I've fished before because it doesn't look, when you see the lake level go up like 30 feet, it blows your mind because you're used to seeing all that rock and it's not there. It's all covered up.
I always think how much work a place like the Bull Shoals boat dock has to winch those docks
Oh,
back and
yeah.
forth when that happens.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's all hands on
Ozarks
deck.
flooded. Mike, you remember that? That was insane.
When it was idle only.
When they shut the whole lake down. Oh yeah, it was no wake the whole lake.
It was idle only everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. I saw back to the sports show. Let me pull that back up again. I was just kind of looking at some of the different topics that are already going to be discussed, and let me see if I got so many tabs.
Steve Kennedy's back again. He was there last year too. Yeah.
Cool.
Dupo Marine brings him and Brandon in usually every year.
Okay, so on Friday, you have Todd Huckabee, Grizzly Jigs at 1. And there looks like there's 2 rooms. There's a Mississippi room, Marquette room, Steve Welch, Shelbyville fishing. And then you got fly fishing at 2, and then meet and greet with Polinick. And you got another crappie at 3, some electronics with Matt Quinn from High Tech. Protecting trophy catfish. I feel like, Eric, you could do a lot of these because you got catfish and crappie. Then we got Harlan from Crocagator.
Michael's coming this year, huh?
Yeah. That's kind of interesting.
I bet the meet and greet is just because they haven't told him what their topic is yet.
Yeah, it might be.
I think it's got bass on the end of it, though.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that might just be a general, I guess.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Well, those 2 are both bass pros, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then even on the 6 o'clock spot, it says meet and greet bass too. So that just may be.
Yeah, it's a placeholder until Brandon probably tells him.
That's kind of what
Mark was wanting, he called. I don't know if he talked to you, Eric, but he was wanting us to give him a topic so he could let them know.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of these guys probably haven't let him know yet. And I'd be willing to bet that they're probably busier than us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These guys are nonstop. You got Jeff Hoots from Tri-State Trolling Motors, Kyle Hopping. It's kind of interesting on Crocagator, Jason Husky bought Crocagator just recently. So that's going to be an interesting transition.
Joey's out?
Yeah, she sold to Jason. And, Jason was we need to have Jason on here sometime to just kind of talk about it a little bit. But he was an integral part of the new bait designs that Crocagator had came out with not too long ago because he's a machinist by nature and he makes the molds. He makes the aluminum molds. So he was supplying a lot of the new shapes and stuff for Crocagator, and those shapes kind of went away, but he's going to be bringing a lot of that stuff back. So that's
Very
good.
cool.
It's good for Crocagator. It's it's hard to run a bait company. It's just a lot of
competition.
A lot of competition.
A lot of competition. A lot of rip off.
Not much margin either.
No.
Not much margin, and rods are the same way, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of competition in rods as well.
Yeah.
I had a guy 2 years ago ask me to go in, and get our own catfish rod. And I wasn't excited about it at all. I didn't even entertain the idea because of the competition. It's too much out there. I mean,
yeah.
And like you said, the margin's too small, and it takes a sizable chunk to jump in,
Yeah.
And then, I mean, you've got to move product just to get your money back. A lot of it before.
It's a lot of marketing strategy too, is what sells.
It is.
Stuff.
It is.
Hey, we got a visitor.
Dell.
Yeah, let's bring Dell in.
What's up, Dell?
What's going on, guys?
Nothing,
What's
dude.
happening?
Long time no see.
Yeah, it's been a minute. How
Yeah.
are you?
Yeah, we're doing good. Your nose hairs look good. I saw you checking them in the mic or the camera.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I combed them down.
Looking spiffy, dude. What's going on at Bull Shows, man? I've seen the pictures. Is it still up that high or what?
We had like a 10-foot rise, and they brought it down pretty. They're slowly bringing it down, but yeah, it's above where it normally is this time of year for sure. but I don't think they were expecting 8 inches of rain to come down in 2 days or whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I saw those docks, those couple pictures that were on Facebook. That row of docks that was pretty crazy, interesting looking.
Yeah, they down at the Bull Shoals Lake boat dock there, they rearranged all their docks, so most of them are all on. Next time you come down, it's going to be like what happened, because they made one long finger and attached all the docks to that long finger. So it's pretty interesting the way they did it, and I get it, because like when the lake comes up, they lose that road, and people can't get to their boats unless they take a taxi. So there's like one way to get on, kind of solves a lot of the issues there.
Oh, so the ramp, the entry ramp is going to be on a higher elevation, like the access to get to those docks now?
Well, they got to move that in and out, but it's only like one entry point to go out to the docks now. So to speak. Yeah. Because they had a dock here, and you would drive over here to the next one, and then you'd walk down. They took all those out and put them all down one main row. So hopefully that helps alleviate a lot of the problem with fluctuating water on Bull Shoals. But who knows when we're going to get a 50-foot swing? Could happen.
Yeah.
A lot of folks don't like the high water, but I kind of grew to like it. It's good for the fishery.
Yeah. So are the people that have the docks that are further away, is that going to be a more like the closer to the road, are those going to be more premium priced, like the further you get away? Because that's a lot of steps. That's a pretty long little walkway out there.
I had to walk it. I had some trailer issues, so fortunately, like I don't normally guide Saturdays, but I'm supposed to be on the water today, but I ended up working on my trailer, so I had to park my boat, and I had to park it all the way at the end. And I kid you not, it's like 200 yards.
Yeah.
I'm like running back because I'm freezing, I'm like not prepared to be out in the cold. I'm like, oh yeah, it's pretty unique, the way they got it set up, but I think it'll be good overall. Yeah. As far as the pricing goes for what they're going to do on that, I think, the more desirable place would be the less walk.
Yeah.
For sure.
You can break it up into like 3 tiers probably.
Yeah. You could almost run a golf cart there, probably. Run folks back and forth.
Yeah. So we're trying to get some topics for this little seminar that we're doing here coming up. You ever spoke at a show before, Dale?
Never
have.
I've done quite a bit. I think if you've got a bunch of people want to know if obviously there's going to be the latest and greatest electronics, but you can kind of cater towards something specific, like for that area,
Yeah.
Most of those folks are going to be fishing those lakes. You pick out one of those topics they can relate to, and it doesn't have to be how to use your forward-facing sonar to catch them. You can share some information on fish location throughout the year, different bait presentations. If you just started with that right there, where fish locations and behavior is throughout the year, you'd have a whole summer on just that.
The highways they use to get from the winter to the spawn, from the spawn to the summer, and back to the winter.
Right. But you don't want to give it all away.
No, sir.
Enough to make it interesting and throw them a few bones, So, yeah.
Yeah, because
enough to make them want to take a guide trip, right, Dale?
Right.
Yeah, I like the sound of that.
Yeah, Eric just got his guide license in Illinois, so.
Oh, good. Congratulations, buddy.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, hopefully get get a little busy. I don't want to get too busy. I have a full-time job, but
Oh yeah, it's a bad habit. A full-time guide is a lot of work.
yeah.
Everyone
Amen.
thinks it's the best job in the world, but it has its moments, but it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not easy. You got to work at it.
Oh yeah.
Are you
When I was a
guiding?
younger Mandel, I used to think I wanted to be a pro fisherman until I went out and fished on the Elite Series as a co and seen how hard they worked. I was like, I got a pretty good paying job and it's pretty steady, and I'm not staying in cheap hotels and fixing flat tires and changing the trolling motor out. And it's a hard on a guy.
Yeah, I like my bed. A guide is
Yeah.
a good way to make a living doing it, and you never know who you're going to get in your boat. So that's kind of a cool thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, it's a different day every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you?
Yeah, I was telling Eric before you got in here, that's my plan. When the kids get out of school, I want to move to Lake of the Ozarks and guide during the week, fish tournaments on the weekend, and maybe work remotely. We got the capability a couple days a week.
That's the bad thing. If you become a fishing guide, that kind of interferes with your tournament guide.
Because people want to go on the weekends.
Well, like I get a bunch of guys they'll have their championship or whatever, and they're from Missouri and they're tournament fishermen or whatever be it. If you're guiding the lake and you're fishing the tournament, all of a sudden they don't want to book you. So like there's been a couple tournaments this past year where I'm like 14 pounds won it. Oh my gosh. I'm like, that's it. Oh my God. But yeah, I mean, there's good and bad to both sides of it, and I think I have that mentality more than other guides, but I'd rather have more guide trips than win the tournament. So
it's guaranteed money, buddy.
Yeah, it's guaranteed money, man. Yeah, a tournament's not. A tournament's a gamble. I mean, you might be on them, but those fish could move overnight, and you could be struggling. But
I take a lot of
like you can catch a fish, you're good.
You'll take a lot of pride when you book a guy who's fishing a tournament and he wins.
Oh yeah, I bet.
That's pretty cool when that happens.
Yeah. Is it hard to like being a guide? And this is Eric, this is for you too, but like if you're a tournament fisherman versus a guide and somebody that's both, do you have to have two different mindsets? Because I would think as a guide, most of the time you're just going out to put people on some fish. Most people just want to get their line tight. It's not like they're going out to catch 5, 6 pound, 7 pound bass. They're just going to catch, to have a good day, to catch a few numbers and just to get away from it all. It's not so important that they catch the biggest fish in the lake. Where as a tournament fisherman, your goal is to catch the 5 biggest ones that you can catch. And so there's kind of, to me, it seems like there might be two different mindsets on how you approach the things.
Definitely. In my opinion, definitely. And especially in the crappie world, I can take people to smaller, more isolated sets that might only have 1 or 2 fish on it. And those are going to be the fish of the day. Or now that's the type of fishing I like to do. That's more quality over quantity. But when you got people in the boat, I mean, they're booking you most of the time because they either want to learn more or they don't have the access to do this like you do. So I take them to what I call the guide piles, a pile with large numbers of fish where they're going to be busy. They're going to be having fun. They're putting fish in the boat. I mean, piles that maybe they're not, I mean, they're catching, 8 to 11 inch fish off of, but they're not getting the 14, 15 inch fish, but they don't care. Those are nice crappie to them. They're one after another. And they're for the most part, I mean, a lot of times easy fish. I mean, and like you said, their line's tight. I mean, that's the difference to me of guiding versus not even just fishing a tournament, but fishing for myself. I like the more spread out, more isolated piles that may only have a fish or 2 on them. And most guys, and I was guilty of it for a long time. I overlooked those piles because I didn't think they had fish on them at all. Those bigger fish would hold tight in the middle of the sets, like the artificial sets, like right where they come out of the concrete. They'd hold tight in there or in the mud around the bases. And you could overlook those fish so easy. It's unbelievable. And those are what I target. So I might go out and I might catch 20 crappie in a day, and I might have some 14 and 15 inches, but majority of those fish are going to be 12 plus. But if I'm guiding somebody, I'm going to the piles with the numbers. They're going to put fish in the boat. And if we get to the point where they've caught a bunch and they've had a good time and they want to go try to catch a big one, then we'll spend the last hour run around and see if we can find them a more quality fish. But definitely, I think two different mindsets for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Eric, like you said, all the guides I've ever had over the years, I still, if I go to Lake Fork for a trip, I'll hire a guide the first day just to figure out what's going on. Make sure I tell him I don't plan on fishing your spots. I just want to get a feel so I don't spend the first 2 or 3 days trying to figure out what's going on.
And that's smart. And what you're paying for is his knowledge and his experience and the current situation, what's going on. You ain't paying for spots. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And that's smart. That's what makes the difference between a good trip and a mediocre or we didn't do so good this time. That's just smart, in my opinion.
Yeah, and having that conversation, I took my son out with Jim Dill at Lake of the Ozarks this summer on our family vacation, and Jim said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I don't care about numbers. I'd like to see my son catch a 5-pounder. Let's just go try to find one big one." Now, he's not – it was tough in the summertime to do that, so we did the opposite of what you just said. We spent most of the day trying to catch a big one. Then we went and caught some fish off a bridge pier with forward-facing sonar. So, but just having that conversation with your guide is the best thing you can do.
Absolutely.
You got your guide is tip conscious, right, Del? So you'll do what they want to go do.
Every day you're on the water, you have to have a game plan for someone who's going to hold the fishing pole upside down and reel it backwards.
Yes, sir.
To a guy who can get in your boat and hit a fish at 85 foot on live scope every time. So, or go skipping docks. You just got to have something for everybody. And that's the people, that's the thing that a lot of folks don't realize is, most time you're trying to get people bit, but at the same time, you get the guy who's going into a tournament or, wants his kid to catch a 5-pounder. So,
Yeah.
And I know, Del, like when I've been in the boat with you, you're looking for a specific scenario. Like you're always looking for the big party, and the big party is like the big groups of shad and the fish that are relating to them. And, sometimes it's not just about catching fish, but like you said, if you're trying to teach somebody a technique, it's nice to have a group of fish, like you were talking about, Eric, a group of fish that's responsive. Yep. So you can talk about the technique and then actually produce results with the technique. And it's nice to have some pet fish, so to speak, that will give you that. Yeah, they'll give you that thing you're looking for, and you're teaching a skill to somebody, which is what they went out in the boat to learn. So instead of like, usually when you do this, you get bites, but it's not happening today. I don't know exactly what's going on, but this is how you do it. It's nice when you do it and boom, you catch fish. It makes you look better and they have a more pleasurable experience.
I agree.
Yeah, I've had people want me to take them out and teach them how to skip a jig, and I'm like, that ain't happening in a day.
No.
We're going to make a lot of mess in this learning process here, but I found the best way to learn how to skip a jig, stand on a milk crate and on the concrete. You'll skip the same way on the concrete as it does the water. So you can do that. And I've told the story many times, Eric. When I first started fishing at Lake of the Ozarks, I didn't have a clue how to skip a jig coming from Illinois. So I'd go down the Alton Marina, set my power poles down, turn the Cardinal game on, maybe take a 6-pack of beer and just sit there and try to pitch to the same hole hours and hours and hours. Maybe the entire Cardinal game.
No, hey, that's what you got to do. And I know where you're coming from. I've never had to skip. The lakes I fish and stuff there. I mean, I never had a lot of dock fishing. I mean, I never had to skip jigs back into the cover. I mean, I just haven't had to do it. So
if you can skip a rock, you can skip a jig. You can figure it out.
Yeah, I probably could. I just have never had to.
Yeah.
That's like the on Bull Shoals, Dell, like the jig head minnow thing, the Demiki rig deal. Around here, there's not. I mean, it's a successful tactic, but it's not as dominant as it is on Bull Shoals and Norfolk and Table Rock and Beaver on those lakes, those clear water deep highland impoundments. So, that's something that I kind of learned from fishing with you and then fishing with some of the other people that fish, like Travis Harriman. He's real good at it. I fished with him and learned a lot about that with him. But there's fish that I can reach most fish around here with a jerk bait.
Yeah.
But I'm not getting a jerk bait down to 40 or 50 feet. So that's when you got to learn how to throw a minnow.
They don't make light enough line for that, Gabe.
I mean, you can really heavily weight it, but you're probably going to lose your action.
Oh,
Yeah.
I remember John. I thought he was going to come unhinged fishing that deep for him. I don't think he'd ever done it when you guys come down like that.
We don't have 50 feet of water, really. I mean, it's like 30.
I grew up fishing where you could touch the bottom with your pole, right, Eric, for the most part.
Oh, yeah, you get a lot of that.
That was my original depth finder, was just tapping the bottom.
Yeah. But I have to say, the view on forward-facing sonar over that deep water is
oh my God, I can imagine.
None. Bull Shoals is so clear anyway, and then you got like 100 foot of water, and it's crystal clear. The feedback, there's no like interference or anything. It's just a nice, beautiful picture. It's like the picture of the Big Mac on the menu
on the billboard.
Yeah, it looks perfect.
Versus what you see when you open the box.
Yeah, and then you drop your boat in at Wren or Shelbyville or something, and you're like, I'm not getting that same picture that they say I'm supposed to be getting. It's a little more cluttered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, most of the advertisements for the forward-facing sonar, they're not doing it from Wren. You know what I'm saying? When they take the pictures of the screen. They're Photoshopped too. They touch them up, and they're always 10 foot. The range is always at 10 feet, so everything's really big. And
you can adjust that screen and make it as clear as you want. You just lose everything. You can't see your jig. You can't see the fish. I mean, I did a lot of live scope trips for guys on their boats, and can't you make it any cleaner? I'm like, absolutely, I can clean it up as much as you want, but the whole goal is to see the fish, to see your lure. Right. And I clean it up, and they're like, well, I can't see nothing. I'm like, exactly. You need some clutter in there. You need. I like the screen hot. I want to see some things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Dell, well, I got you on here.
Hey, your dog is interfering with my dog.
That's her editing chair. She thought we were coming down here to edit video. Next thing you know,
she's rebelling.
Yeah, and my daughters are getting home from work, so she knows that they get home about this time. So she's just super antsy. She hears any noise and she's ready to go. I usually turn the fan on in the bathroom, but I turned it off because I didn't think she was going to come in here. But here she is. I was going to ask Eric and Dell, both of you guys, since you guys are running live scope. What battery can I asked Drew Gill and Marshall Robinson this the other night, but I won that boat, right? And I'm trying to figure out my battery setup and my electronic setup on it before I order everything. I was curious about what's your setup as far as battery configuration to graphs and that kind of thing.
Go ahead, Jill. What I run, I have a dual setup, a dual mount up front. So I run a 1222 with the LVS 34 up front, and I run a 106 SV up front for my mapping. I run them off the same battery, and I run an 80 amp hour lithium.
Okay.
that
Just for your live scope.
and it just runs the live scope and my 2 monitors for the front.
Okay.
I run all that off of that battery, and I can, with that 80 amp hour, I can fish that I can run out of daylight before I run out of battery.
Yeah.
And do you put it close, Eric? Do you put it up in the rod box, or is it on the back?
I like to not add wire if I don't have to. So I have my battery up front with all my gear. I don't have anything with any extra wire attached to it. And I know you can use, 10 gauge marine grade wire. I mean, it's good. There's good products out there. If I don't have to add to it, I don't. I mean, I like, one, you keep it simple, and two, I like to keep everything close, and then I run 3 lithiums for my trolling motor up front as well. And I mean, they're light. The batteries, they got an amazing warranty on them. I mean, years.
Mm-hmm.
And it just.
Are you running 50 amp or 100 amp or more?
I run an 80 amp hour.
Okay, so three 80 amp hours.
I got 380s for my trolling motor, and I got 180 for my live scope setup up front.
Okay, and then what's your starting battery and to run all the other stuff?
Now the starting battery is the same one I've had for a couple of years. I haven't upgraded it yet, so I'm still just running the lead acid on that. Okay. And then my live scope in the back of the boat, it doesn't get as much action. I got an LVS 32 on the back with a 106 SV, and I run that on a 30 amp hour lithium. And I've just provides juice to the 1 monitor and the 32. That's it. Nothing else on that battery.
What do you think about the 12 the GPS map versus the 106, like the 1222 versus the 106? As far as do you notice any clarity difference? Is one crisper than the other, or are they close to the same?
They're pretty close to the same. Basically what I did was I bought the 1222 because it was the best buy for the 12-inch screen at that time. So, and if you're setting up forward facing sonar, you right off the bat, you get, and I tell everybody the same thing, you get the biggest screen you can comfortably afford. You don't want to buy products 2 or 3 times. So, I mean, if you can swing it, get the biggest one you can get right off the bat. You're going to be the happiest with it. And
yeah, when I just got live scope like 2 years ago, I got a 1022 GPS map, Garmin, and I still got the LVS 32. And I was like, oh, this is cool. This is really cool. And then I went in and I jumped in the boat with Dell, and he's got a 12-inch. And I'm like, damn.
And even the 10 to 12, it's a big difference.
Yeah.
His resolution's the same as yours. I mean, it's just that extra 2 inches changes everything. Mm-hmm. I went from a 93. See, I didn't have anybody when I got my live scope, I didn't know anybody that had a live scope on their boat. So I had to go through the motions myself. So I got the live scope. Started with a 32, started with a 93 SV. And I mean, I'm about to turn 50. Those eyes is not working like they used to.
Oh, yeah,
so,
yeah.
It didn't take me long to upgrade to the 1222, and I moved to the 93 to the console, and I moved things around the boat, and now I run a Gen 4 Helix 12 on the console because I like Hummingbird's side scan better than I do Garmin's. I mean, I love the Garmin, but in my opinion, they have better side scans. So that's what I run on the console. And then I have 2 106 SVs and the 1222. And then a 32 and a 34 on the live scope.
And then I fished with Brock Belud at Pickwick just earlier this year. And he had the NTB.
Oh, yeah.
It was like the 16-inch one.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, God, that is so much. So you go from the 10 to the 12 to the 16, and each upgrade is noticeably different.
It's
night and day, but
But I paid the 1222 when I bought it. I paid $2,000 for it. That 16-inch NBT is $4,000. So, I mean, that's what I say. If you can afford that, if that's in your means, you go for it. You get the biggest you can comfortably afford. I mean, don't miss a meal or skip a house payment. But if you can comfortably afford it, if it's in your means, you do it. You do it the first time. You go the biggest you can comfortably go, without being upset about the purchase.
Dale, what's your battery setup?
Oh, I don't want to talk about it.
He's so secretive. He lives out in the backwoods in Arkansas. He don't want to share anything.
Damn nature state gets you.
You're running DeWalt cordless drill batteries, right?
No.
I've seen a bunch of that.
I'm running the only thing I got in my boat is 2 lithium batteries. That's it.
Okay.
But Eric's 100% right. If you can get the biggest screen you can justify and afford, and I tell guys, if you're gonna buy a couple graphs, make the Garmin the 12 instead of having another 12. Go down to a 10 or an 8 and compensate there, because that's where you're gonna need it. I think in the ideal world, I've got the dual mount up front with. I'm running a Bird and the Garmin 126 SV. I got the 34, and it makes a difference. A lot of guys say, well, is it really that much different? I'm like, well, I can see a spoonbill swimming and know it's a spoonbill at 60
Absolutely.
feet away and 60 feet down. So, yeah, the little things like that make a difference. I mean, after a while, you kind of know what species is what just by the way they're formed up coming through the water. But after a while, that setup, going back to the Garmin, I think the only downfall to the 126 SV is, you're the active captain, so you can't record what you're doing. You got to hold your phone up to the screen if you want to do anything. But that's probably a good thing, because between, not that I do a bunch of YouTube videos anymore, but I do a little bit of videoing for stuff. It's just one more thing you could do if you had a different unit than that. But I'm very happy with that. I think as far as the Humminbird goes, I still like their mapping. That's what I got. I've been in Humminbird just because of their mapping for a while. I think you can do more things with it. I did see some Garmins they're coming right along. I think the ideal setup, if I could afford it, obviously would be have a Garmin, a Lowrance. In my opinion, some of those Lowrance have some of the best sonar. As stupid as that sounds, Lowrance still, I feel, has the best overall sonar. Side imaging, I'm happy with the Humminbird, and their mapping is good. Lowrance would be another great one for. Garmin's good too for like waypoint management. So like Eric, if you're like, for me, a couple years back, I started. I'm throwing one out there for you. What I'll do is I will take notes in my graph. So if you have a touchscreen where you wreck them, let's say, for instance, there's a bridge in a creek that I go to every Christmas time and wreck them. So I put a note there after the first year. And the second year, I was flying right past there, and I said, okay, December, fish this bridge, blah, 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 or whatever. Then I made it even more complicated. So I started doing different colors. So October, I'll use orange for pumpkins, purple for November, red for December, Santa Claus, obviously, and then so on and so forth. Light blue for January, and so on and so forth. So when you're cruising down the lake, if you haven't been there in a while, or you want to try and figure out your pattern, that might be something that you guys can utilize in your day in, day out. Leave yourself little notes, because you don't trust, you don't always trust the guys at the dock saying they did it here on this. So you trust yourself. So like, I don't mark every 5-pounder, but I will mark spawning areas that are traditional spawning areas, or I will mark shad locations during the migration. And it's kind of every year they're not right in that waypoint, but they may be 100 yards around there. So
that's a lot like we were talking about earlier of keeping logs.
Yeah.
I've kept detailed logs on all the species I fish for. And that's the same thing. You're using your electronics to do it. So it's right on the boat. That's smart.
yeah.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
the ideal of the notes too, because
Yep.
it's, I mean, in your head you might remember, I know it was kind of cold. You know, I know it was kind of cold when we caught those fish. Well, that's like September to March, you know, it could be, you know, or October to March. I don't know. But
I'll
when
tell you
put,
something
like,
else. That, another thing that's real huge is the cell phones these days. People ask me all the time, do you take a picture of every fish you catch? I take a picture of a lot of fish. And I take pictures of the jigs or the lures. Now, I share a lot of information. So in my groups, a lot of times I post the jig or the lure that I'm catching the fish on. I'll even post pictures of my live scope screen so they can see the depth and type of structure I'm fishing. And then I do give a lot of pictures of the fish. I share that, but every bit of that is part of my log because it timestamps every photo. So I can go years back in my phone and I can say, well, look at this. December 12th, I did this. The next year, December 15th, I did this. I already know where to go. I know what's up. I know what jig to rig. I know what depth I was fishing. So I can go right out to the garage the night before I'm going fishing. I can power up my unit. I can go to my mapping. I can zoom in and I can say, well, look here. I got this waypoint, this waypoint, this waypoint, and all these depths that are right on with what I've been catching fish in. Now, tomorrow, I have a whole game plan. As soon as I put my boat on the water, I know right where I'm going, right where I'm starting. I haven't even had to be on that lake for 2 months. I mean, I don't know how many times this year I was fishing hardcore with my daughter. So I hadn't been at Carlisle for at one point, it was a couple months. And I looked back through my stuff. I went to Carlisle and it was like I never missed a beat. I was just right on the fish hitting them. And it's one more way right there, that cell phone, to keep those records for me. And then you get memories pop up. And when your memories will pop up, a year ago, you did this. Like, oh, look here. Guess what? This weekend, we're going over there. I mean, that stuff, I mean, every bit of that, I mean, that's all intel and it all adds up. And if you pay attention to it, you can, for the most part, year after year, the same time frames, you can duplicate it.
Yeah, and those.
When do you say that, Eric?
It may not be exact, but it's going to be close enough that you know you're going to find it. I mean, you're going to figure it out.
It's funny you say that, Eric. I was down at the lake and memory popped up the night before, me with a sock cap on and holding the 5-pounder up with a giant willow leaf spinnerbait. I knew right where that spot was.
That's
and
right.
I went there and caught him. Yeah.
I mean,
you're like, sometimes it's a bait that you haven't thrown in a while. Like
it was the memory was from 3 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, oh, I haven't thrown that bait in a couple of years. Maybe I need to break that thing out again.
Yeah, I mean, it's everything is out there. I mean, it's just paying attention to it. It's right and some of it is so much right in front of your face that it's overlooked. And even like what Dell was talking about the 34 and how much better it was in the 32. I told you earlier that in them small structures, I used to pass over those fish where there was only 1 or 2 fish in them structures. It was because I didn't have enough target separation on my 32 to pick those fish out. And the first time I got to 34 and I went out and hit those piles, I saw something I didn't see before with the 32. And I thought, what is that? Is that a fish? I wasn't even sure until I dropped on it. And the first one I plucked out of that was a 14-inch fish. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just hit the jackpot. And then I bounced around and it's been every bit since. It's been working the whole time. It finds fish you couldn't find with the 32. I mean, if you pull up on a pile with 100 fish on it, okay, that's a no-brainer. It's full. But those are not your quality fish. And it definitely shines when it comes to the target separation and the overall clarity. So, I mean,
yeah, I've seen that too, fishing with different. I got the 32, but I've gotten the boat. I mean, most people have a 34 by now, and it's a noticeable difference in my opinion.
I'm just afraid they're going to come out with something new that
I know, man.
gotta
And
buy.
stuff's on sale right now.
and they will.
I'm nervous.
I'm very nervous myself, and I believe here's my opinion on it. I think they already have it. I think
Yeah,
it's.
they do.
I think it's
Oh,
sitting on the shelf. I think it's sitting on the shelf. They already have it, but people are still, in my opinion, the Garmin is still at the top of the game with the forward facing. People are still buying the crap out of them. They're still hot. I mean, why would they shoot themselves in the foot by releasing the new product yet when they're still selling the crap out of these?
Yep.
I mean, maximize, the sales, and that's what they're doing. I truly believe they already have it.
Yeah.
So I mean, we'll see soon enough, but
until somebody one ups them, I know Hummingbird's coming out with a Gen 2 Live. That's I don't know. I watched a video on it today, and it's going to be an upgrade, but they had a lot of room to upgrade.
They did. They absolutely
so,
did.
I don't know if that'll
leading the way.
Yeah, I don't know if
in my opinion. And I mean, they don't pay me a red cent. I mean, that's an honest, true opinion. Is that Garmin's leading the way still in the forward facing. Mm-hmm. They do got to step up their game before they catch up, let alone pass them. And that's my opinion.
Are you glad you bought one, Gabe?
What?
When you're on the fence about what to buy?
Well, right now they got Bass Pro Shops has the 1222 for $17.99, so it's $200 off, and then they got the LVS 34 plus package for $200 off, and I'm gonna be buying. I'm gonna be buying.
You have the club member card?
I do.
Okay, so if you go on a Monday, you get additional 10% off of that electronics until December 21st or 3rd. As long as you go on a Monday and use your club card, you'll get an additional. And they got the 34 on sale right now with a black box for $14.99.
Yeah.
That also on a Monday falls under the same extra 10% off. Well, I bought a backup. I also got an additional some promotion they had with it. I got an additional $200 in club points on my card. So I got it for $14.99, then another 10% off. So they knocked another $150 off, and then 200 points.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
thank you for telling me that.
That's the Mondays right now.
It's been in my cart just sitting there, and I haven't pulled the trigger on it. So I'll definitely wait till Monday.
Wait till Monday.
Yeah.
Financing available.
Yeah, I know they got 0% for 12 months too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good option. I'm gonna have to go that way.
It is. And I mean, they offer the deals they offer, like that deal right there. I mean, they already knocked 200 off, then another 10%, and then the points too. Like, I mean, that was, to me, it was a no-brainer. And then having the backup is also a no-brainer to me, because that's a lifeline of a lot of my guide trips. So I need to know if something goes down, I got another one I can swap out real quick,
Yeah. You just hope that they don't drop the LVS 38 or 40 or whatever, like January 2nd. Because
January 3rd I'll go get it.
Yeah.
And
the 34 is good too. It's going to be fine.
Yeah, and honestly, I tell you, I run a 32 on the back of the boat. It's still relevant. I mean, the 32 ain't no joke. No. I mean, the 34 has a couple of things it's better at, but I will tell you this, in my opinion, for crappie fishing, if I'm open water sniping, however you want to call it, if I'm open water fishing, individual, targeting individual crappie, I like the 32 better than the 34.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if you the problem with the difference is the 1222 doesn't have a fast enough processor to keep up with the 34. So if you run that unit very hot, you're going to have a little bit of lag. So, and you can adjust most of it out, but not all of it.
It's not as bad as the Lowrance, is it? The active target?
No,
That's got a major delay.
There's a little bit of lag, and you can go into your noise reject and stuff, and you can adjust it out, but there's still a little bit there. But if you're open water fishing for those big crappie, and sometimes they're 6 inches, a foot under the surface, if your jig goes below that fish, it's game over. So the 32 with the lower, like the 1222, the 1022, or the 106s or 126s, that 32 works better with their processor and has no lag, no delay. I mean, you can see that jig hit the water and you can swim it right over their head and not spook the fish. So, I mean, don't count out the 32. It's still a very legit unit and it does its job. It's just there's a couple things that the 34 was better at, and that was basically the overall clarity and the target separation.
Huh. So is that lag enough that a person should think about something besides the 1222 if they're going with
I have it set up. I mean, you can adjust it out. I have it set up on my screen where I guarantee the average person won't even notice anything.
Okay. So it's not just noticeable.
No, it's very little. But if you got an 1/8 ounce jig and your fish is a foot under the surface, you've got to see the splash on the screen and you've got to catch that jig before that 1/8 ounce jig drops a foot below the surface. You understand what I'm saying? So if I have any lag at all, I'm going to drop that jig below that fish and it's game over. That the gig's up. I mean, them big fish are smart.
Dell,
So
you guide tomorrow?
I've got to be able to present that right and track it just right.
Gotcha.
I got a cancellation for Tuesday. I don't know if I'm going to post up for that or not. I might just sit at the house.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Is it what kind of? You got cold weather too, right?
We got cold right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are a little further north of us, but it got cold. It's supposed to be like 19 or something tonight. Something ridiculous.
That's about what we got. Something like that. It was like 18 this morning when I got in the truck to go to work, and it got right at freezing today, but the wind was blowing like 20, 30 miles an hour off and on. It was pretty brutal.
What was crazy is it was 54 yesterday.
Yeah.
We had a 40-degree temperature drop in a matter of hours. Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah,
I'm about tired of the wind. I'm sure most guys are right now.
Yeah.
It wears you out. Just literally your body's trying to keep your core heat up just because of the cooler temperatures, and then you're fighting the wind on top of it. And I went fishing yesterday. I got on the water about noon and I fished till dark, and that's not even that long, 5 hours. And I was just burnt. I got home like tired because the wind was blowing and it was cold. And you get in the shade. It's okay if you're out of the wind and you're in the sunshine. You're like, this is okay. I wish I would have got here about 3 hours earlier. I always kick myself for kind of sleeping in and getting to the lake when it warms up. And then as soon as if you get in closer to the bank, like the section I was fishing had some bluffs. And so about, 2 o'clock that the sun's getting lower in the sky and you get in that shadow and you get in a little bit of wind, you're like, you start jackhammering, even though the air temperature is the same, it makes a big difference.
That's why all my cold weather gear is black. I want it to soak up as much sun as I can.
Yeah,
that's a good call. That's a veteran move right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you got to catch them tomorrow, Dale? Is it still like a deep thing?
I mean, you could do a lot of different things, but I'm going to take these guys. I kind of taught them the whole thing over the years. When I got it, I'm like, okay, we're going to go cranking because it's windy. And then the next day it's like, well, we're going to go try this. And they're like, what? And yeah, I'll be scoping them and they should catch some fish. It's not stupid yet by any means, but it's doable.
How many of your customers are repeat, Dale?
I'd probably say 80%.
That's pretty cool.
That's very good.
It took a while. It takes a while.
When do things slow down? Is it like January, February still, or?
January, February is kind of like a crapshoot, and I tell guys all the time who want a book, I'm like, if there's an ice storm, we ain't going. You guys that are diehards, have at it, but stuff starts breaking when it's, high of 20 and the wind's blowing 30 miles an hour. Even if you are catching fish, stuff's breaking, and it's just not worth it. But
Yeah.
I think we're far enough south where we get plenty of those days where it's in the 40s, 50s, 60s sometimes in January. So I get a lot of last minute stuff. A lot of folks will come down from like St. Louis. They'll look at the forecast and be like, what about Friday? I got Friday. I can take Friday off.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how it goes. But it definitely slows down because of the weather, January, February. And then my other slow time would be July, August. Now there's more opportunities to guide, but it's a lot of they're not used to Bull Shoals Lake, the tourists, and I mean it's great. I do a lot of half days come July, August, September, just because of the heat and the fishing. Once the sun gets up high on that lake, I tell them, come July, if you're not at the boat ramp by 5 a.m., you might as well just turn back around because we're going to miss half the bites for the day. So,
What all do you guide for?
I just do bass.
Just do bass.
I just do bass. Yeah, it's the first year I came down, I took the whole year to make sure I could catch them all year round. And even back then, before forward-facing sonar, I was all offshore catching schoolers on 2D sonar and winter and summer. And after I got my feet wet and figured the seasonal out, the nice thing is about bull is there's smallmouth, largemouth, and Kentucky. So one of them is always going to make a mistake. That's the beauty of it. But all in all, I'd say July, August suck, and January, February will have its moments. But usually after December, I'm ready. I'm ready to slow down a little bit, anyways.
Makes sense.
I bet.
The beauty of that lake and Table Rock is you can find at times of the year where you can catch keepers of all three species in the same stretch.
Yeah.
That's what's cool.
Yeah. Table Rock seems to fish a little easier at time. I was just talking to a guy up there, and I haven't been up in a while. I think I went out and fished a benefit tournament or two, and I like that lake because there's tons of brush everywhere, one, and you usually stumble on a good wad of fish somewhere.
Yeah. It's just so vast. Well, Bull Shoals is too. Every time I've been to Bull Shoals, I think, man, how did guys get around here before GPS without just getting lost?
The mile markers.
Yeah, I guess. But, man, it all looks the same.
Oh.
It all looks the same.
I've never been there, but it's on my list.
Yo, you'd love it.
Yeah,
you'd love absolutely.
I want to go chase some of them big crappie down there, and there's some phenomenal white bass in that lake in the wintertime.
Yeah.
And they are so fat on shad, and that's not something a lot of guys get excited about going and chasing. But I mean, 3-pound white bass. I mean, that's
yes, sir.
Those are studs.
It's not uncommon to run into 4 or 5 pre-spawn. I know a guy, that's all he targets in the early pre-spawn. He goes up there and that's what he wants is a 5-pound white bass. And he catches. Bull's one of those lakes that there's a lot there, but at the same time, being the lake that it is, it can go from hot to not in the loss of a cloud. It's one of those lakes where, okay, everything, what happened? Well, the clouds went and the wind stopped, and you have to, that's the thing is fish the conditions, because it's changing by the second, on top of wind, clouds, barometric pressure, the weather, the moon phase, sunrise, sunset, and then some other guys on your spot. I mean,
Boat shadow.
yeah, you just gotta.
Yeah, boat shadow is a big deal on them clear
You know,
lakes, man.
And a lot of guys don't know about that boat shadow. You know, I deal with like a lot of like mediocre, you know, type of guys that are on their way up, you know, and I do a lot of electronic stuff for guys like that, and there's so many of the little things that, you know, I tell them it's like a puzzle. You know, I said if you dump a box of 1,000 pieces to a puzzle, and I said, what if you lost a couple pieces on the floor and you put it all together? I said the picture don't look right. You're missing a couple key pieces. It's when you can put every piece in, and it's that beautiful picture at the end of the day that, look at this, you know, it's complete. That's what all the little details add up to. It's all the little things that make that day great at the end, that paint that beautiful picture for you. And those are the things that separate guys like us and then those guys that are just coming up. I tell them, here's what you have. I said, you got a couple classes. I said, you have guys that really like to fish, and then you have legit fishermen. And there's a big gap between. And I said, a lot of it to fill the gap is putting together all the little details. You know, when you can remember it, you can put it together, and you can consistently put a pattern on fish. That's the difference between maybe catching a few fish or having the best day of your life. And it's getting that in their head, you know, and how to see them and pick up on them as they go, you know. Like, it's so easy to overlook so many things, but they're all important.
Mm-hmm. I've seen guys too, man, in tournaments. You run balls to the wall to get to your first spot, which you think is your best spot, and then they throw that trolling motor in the water like they're throwing a fucking bowling ball in the water. It's like, dude, you might still catch fish, but you ain't catching the biggest one that lives here.
No.
And you should have shut down 100 yards from where you want to be, lightly put your trolling motor in, and creep up there where you want to fish.
Absolutely. And like I was saying, a boat shadow, like a lot of my fishing is done on Carlisle up here, and the clarity's not good. You know, boat shadows for the most part, not an issue, you know.
Nope.
Hey, Eric.
Yeah.
You'll have to watch. I think it's coming out here before too long this spring. Bill Dance just did a show down here on the crappie. If you're a crappie guy, you might want to look into that one.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
So,
do you know anybody?
How many days did he film, Dale?
What's that? Oh, well.
How many days did he film down there? Do you know?
2 days.
2 days?
Yeah.
I heard a rumor that it's possible you might be in there somewhere.
No,
just a rumor. Okay.
Yeah, I made sure I was out of the picture. I run the camera boat for my buddy who took him out. He guides on the lake for crappie, and he's a hammer. He's just one of the guys that, you know, when I go to the boat ramp every day, just about, not every day, but quite a bit, more often than not. He was the one other guy plus one other walleye guy, and I'm like, dude, I'm going to put you in my fishing report on Facebook because I'm tired of people asking me about crappie. Of course, when you're bass fishing, every once in a while you'll catch a handful of those 2-3 pound crappie when they bite your swim bait or whatever. And I don't know what to tell them. So, yeah, Bull's kind of an interesting sleeper lake for crappie. I'll say that.
Yep. It's got some studs. I got some buddies that fish it.
No.
I haven't. Like I said, it's on the list. I just haven't made it there.
Yeah, when we had the last time Cody Huff was on here, he was talking about catching some just mondo sized crappie, like threes, like many of them. I'm like, whoa. But we also can't forget about the Arkansas redfish population in Bull. It's pretty strong down there. That was amazing. There's schools of drum, and you can sit on top of them and drop a minnow on them at 50 feet and just like one after another, after another, after another. So if the bass aren't biting and the crappie aren't biting, you can always go find some drum and at least get your line tied. But
Yeah,
that was,
you guys were like little kids that day. We're out
dude, that was a blast.
bass.
that was a
And,
blast.
I mean,
I try to be like a little kid every day, Dell, if I can.
I'm like, okay, just one more drum, and then we're gonna go bass fishing again. And sure enough, he drops another one down. Oh, Gabe's like, their bite is just phenomenal. I'm like, he starts handing me the rod so he could just set the hook on the next one. I'm like, oh my gosh, we gotta go.
We were tripled up a bunch of times. It was fun. Well, it was cool to be able to pick an individual fish out at 50 feet and try to see if you could flip your little minnow and drop it right on his head.
I love that.
Yeah, it was just so cool. I mean, because it's when you got that many fish, it's a foot one way or another, and you didn't drop it on that exact fish. But if you're really focused on that one fish and you know which one it is, nobody else knows, but and you're able to actually put it right on his head, that's like a win for yourself.
Oh yeah.
And then when they bite, that's even better. Like I picked that fish out of 50 fish. I caught that sucker.
I love that.
Hand the rod to Dell.
I do love that.
It's funny, dude. The whole forward-facing sonar. Like there was an engineer at work. I work at an engineering company, and he overheard me talking to another guy about it, right? And he said, "Well, that's not fishing. That's not even fair." And I was like, "You know what? You really think if I gave you the best forward-facing sonar, and I'll go out without a depth finder, I'm still going to whoop your ass because you don't know shit about how to find where they're at first.
Yeah,
you still got to know where to go look."
Oh,
you got to make
everybody thinks that it's automatic. It is not automatic.
It's not. That's what I tell them all the time. I said, I've looked all over for that make them bite button, and I ain't found it yet.
Yeah.
There's nothing more disgusting to me than pulling up on a whole school of fish or a tree loaded with fish and not being able to get one of them to bite.
Yep.
I mean, that's frustrating. I like it better in the old days when I just said, well, there's none there.
Yeah.
No.
I likened it to sight fishing. Some guys will stay there too long because they think they're going to get them to bite.
Yeah.
You got to figure out when they're not and move on.
You get a couple casts, and that's it. And if they don't hit it on the first couple casts, it's not. I mean, I'm talking about bass. If you see a couple bass just standing out there and you make a couple casts and they follow it real slow, it's done, man. You might as well move on.
What amazed me was the amount of follows, like with largemouth fishing.
Yeah.
The amount of follows that you would get that didn't get bit. Before the forward-facing sonar, I had no idea. I mean, we must have been getting so many follows. It was stupid that they just, in my opinion, they get too good a look at it. If they get too good a look at it, you forget it. It's over. You pick a new fish.
So I was throwing a jerkbait yesterday, and I'm throwing at not big fish, but probably 1.5 pounds to maybe 2.5 pound fish. Just decent little fish. And I was pulling them up off the bottom. They're in the bottom
they're in the
bottom in like 12 feet maybe. Yep. And you wouldn't really even see them.
Yep.
But you just make a cast like fishing outside the weed line, and you get a little bit away from the weeds, and then you'd see one, your jerkbait's doing this, and you'd see one come up. And they get so close to it, you'll jerk, and then they'll come up to it. You jerk, and they'll come up to it. Mm-hmm. And they'll actually blend to where you can't see it, and you're waiting for your line to get heavy. You're waiting for your line to jump. So they're on it. Be less than 6 inches away from that bait, and they're just sitting there looking at it because you're letting it sit for a couple seconds. So they're getting such a good look at it. And
way too good a look.
Yep. Or if it's overcast and there's a little more wind, they might have committed. But when you're in like a slick area with full sunshine, they can count the treble hooks. They can tell what's going on.
So as anglers, I think kind of what everyone said is, and you guys are like me, it's just amazing to learn fish behavior.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, how many years did we think they were doing this and find out, that ain't at all what's happening in the winter time.
100%.
They are train wrecking at 50 miles an hour.
A friend of mine I fish with occasionally, he is a fisheries biologist here in Illinois. And and he told me he's been in my boat a couple times fishing with the live scope, and he told me that the live scope had debunked so many of their theories on fish behavior. And I asked him, I said, well, think about it. How do you guys literally study these fish? And they capture them, they put them in a tank, they study them. I'm like, that's not fish behavior.
Mm-mm.
That's prisoner behavior.
Yeah.
You take a guy and you arrest him and you put him in a jail cell and you can stare at him all day. You're not getting his normal behavior. You're getting him trapped. He's going to do what you let him do. And that's what he said. He said it just debunked so many of their theories and what they thought behavior was. And the behavior, like Dale said earlier, you'll get to the point where I can look on there and I'll tell, oh, hey, those are white bass. Those are hybrid striper. These are crappie. And guys are like, well, how can you tell? It just looks like a blob. And I said, it does, but their behavior is different than everyone else's. And that's how I tell the difference between the species of fish is how they set up and their behavior. And so many more fish relate to the mud than I ever knew at different times a year. And I'll catch a lot of largemouth out of the mud and a lot of big crappie out of the mud. And you, like you said, they just come up out of nowhere, but they relate to the mud a lot.
That's
That
going
might
on
be
right
because
now.
you're at Carlisle, Eric.
What's that?
That might be because you're at Carlisle. That's why.
So it could have a lot to do with it, but I definitely now Bull Shoals. I'm sure is a good bit different. I mean, our lakes up here, they're a different animal.
There's some clay bank opportunities throughout the year, which is our mud, or silted in the backs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
Well, that's just it. Bass
typically-
behavior in Illinois, where Eric's fishing, is completely different than where you're at, Dale.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And you're talking about fish following. Like I grew up fishing all the shallow, dirty stuff here in Illinois, or when I lived in Illinois. And the first time I went to the Lake of the Ozarks or Table Rock, and you see fish follow, and then you think, "Oh wow, how much was that going on at Carlisle?" And I had no idea.
Yep.
I've got so many bass at Lake of the Ozarks because I've seen them follow. Come out from the dock.
Right.
When I'm doing that dock thing, swimming docks with the big jewel football jig, I see so many fish that eat it. I see them before I ever feel them. I don't know what you think, Del, but I think that everybody says, well, why are you running it so fast? I think, well, because I always think if that thing's running that fast, the biggest bass on that dock thinks something's about to eat it, so I'm going to get into that party.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have hands. If he wants
Right.
to slow it down and look at it, he's got to put it in his mouth.
Mhm.
Yeah. So they figure that something's chasing it if it's going that fast. And he's like, this is my dock. If anybody's eating, I'm eating.
Yeah. And that's what I tell people. What happens when something runs? You chase it. You don't know why.
Right.
It's just instinct. It's nature. If somebody runs from you, you just chase them.
Especially the cops. If they're running from the cops, you definitely.
Yeah. If you see me running, you better run too, because I'm out of bullets and shit went sideways.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tell you what's been messing with me is bluegill. I'm amazed at how aggressive a bluegill can. There was a school of bluegill. I thought they were crappie or small bass. Yesterday I was throwing jerkbait, and them suckers would come flying. The water's 46 degrees. They just come flying and smack that jerkbait. And you think you got a crappie or a small bass, and it's a bluegill. And it's like
We were having that happen our last few bass trips out, and that's what we were thinking. We were bank fishing, me and my daughter, but that's what we were thinking. And I think we got settled in on it was crappie. We thought was just grabbing the tail of the worm, and they would run with it. I mean, swim sideways like crazy, but it didn't feel like the tap 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 from the bluegill as much. It was more of just a tap, but it was just the crappie, I think, just grabbing the tail and trying to swim off with it. And you'd set the hook and the tail of your worm's gone.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say real quick, I was fishing. What lake is that? Well, it's one of those smaller city lakes up in.
Don't be giving stuff away.
It's around Pyramid State Park. And anyway, it's a little city lake. And actually, if I remember it, I know what it is now, but I don't even want to say what lake it is. But I was throwing a white swim jig, just throwing the little Cumberland Pro Lures Bama swim jig, and I kept getting bites. I catch a bass every once in a while, but I kept getting
Let's start
bites.
with a D.
No, it starts with a P.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think I might have said it accidentally.
And let me let go get him, Ben. But I caught a couple decent bass, but I was getting a lot of bites, and they'd grab it, and then I'd set the hook, and nothing. And I'm like, what is going on? I knew it wasn't bluegill, but then I started thinking about it, and it was the time of the year when the crappie spawn. And they were crappie. I was throwing up there shallow, like 0 to 4 foot. And as I was coming off the bank, I was coming across crappie beds, and the crappie were hitting it. And I would catch, I'd catch a bass every once in a while. So I changed from like a green pumpkin to, they make a color called chartreuse shiner, but it's white, but it's got some black specks in it and a little bit of chartreuse to it. And I put, instead of having like a menace type trailer, I put a small swim bait. So I was trying to mimic a crappie. And when I did that, I was still getting the crappie bites, but I started catching some like 4 and 5 pound bass because those bass were sitting up there and they were feeding on those crappie. But I just kind of put that puzzle, you're talking about
Good read. Yep.
I put those couple puzzle pieces that were missing together, and I had a hell of a day. But
yep, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
That's what's fun about having fishing partners like me and Gabe, like bouncing ideas off of each other all day. You get
absolutely.
Gabe's my inner. It's time to move because I'm stubborn. I like to try to make them bite, but
yeah.
I noticed some of your videos, Gabe, that you have done some of them on some of the lakes in Pyramid. There's some phenomenal lakes down there.
I know.
Phenomenal. There's a few I fish for different things, and there's a really good hybrid lake down there. Really good.
Really?
And I think it's a kind of a sleeper. I've never seen anybody else fishing for them there, and I've done numerous trips.
Nice.
And it's pretty good, especially when water's running.
Okay. Yeah, there's so many of them that I have fished.
Yes, and that's a phenomenal lake.
Yeah.
Yeah,
in the past, there's been some Thames taken out of that place.
That's a phenomenal lake. It's very good for bass and very good for some big black crappie.
Okay, I need to
do some exploring. You guys gonna get mad if I leave?
No, man. I'm glad you got to come on here and hang out with us.
It was nice meeting you.
Yeah, it was nice meeting you.
Good getting to talk to you.
Yeah, me and JB are still planning on coming down there sometime.
Sure you are.
February. I'm out of vacation time, dude. I ran out of vacation time. I fished too many tournaments this year.
Watch the weather, make the phone calls, make it happen.
Yeah, we will.
You did good in the tournaments this year too. Congratulations, man. You did good.
Gabe killed it.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pretty good year, man. I was holding my mouth.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, things just have to go right. And
Gabe's a hammer.
Oh, sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Del,
if you got to get used to losing if you're going to play this game.
Oh yeah, exactly. I figure my whole philosophy is if I can fish all year long as far as tournaments and break even, that's a success for me.
That's a win if you got a day job.
Yeah, because I enjoy it so much that you're not doing it to become rich. You're doing it because you love it and there's a passion there, and it's something that you just really enjoy doing. But if you can break even, then all the love and the passion and all that, it's just an extra bonus that goes on top.
Yeah. I always say, as long as I'm breaking even, my wife will let me keep going. So
that's right.
Yep.
That's right. Yep. That little $167 check goes a long way sometimes,
Yeah.
Absolutely. I never
win a boat every now and then helps too.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, heck yeah, that'd help. Yeah. I never did get into the tournament end of it. I don't know. It just never piqued my interest.
Yeah.
Well, if you haven't got in, don't
sometimes.
Yeah. You don't fish? Do you fish any tournaments at all, Dale? Or have you the last couple of years? Really.
A couple years back, I fished OMTT, and that's the one part I miss is forced to go different places and the camaraderie of
travel with.
Yeah.
those relationships have their own thing, you know. Like some of those guys, they're coming back from Kentucky from the weekend, and they're like, "No," you know.
Yeah.
So it's that part's kind of cool. So that's it. I'd say that's probably the only part that I miss. Over the years, I fished some crazy stuff. I fished professionally for muskies for a while, and I did some tournament stuff. I don't know. I'm not saying I'm past it, but I'm content with where I'm at.
Yeah.
You know?
When I was fishing the solo series, which I loved, the group of guys that we stayed in the house together is what I miss.
So
We wouldn't see each other for months, and then we'd be like, we're there last weekend, you know?
no.
Oh yeah, that's what it's all about, man.
Yeah.
It's all about the drives and the travel and the lunches and all that stuff, hanging out. All right, Dale, I'll let you go, man.
Out of here.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out.
I'll be disappointed if you don't talk bad about me when I'm gone.
Never.
I'll have to watch it tomorrow, though.
Yeah, we're waiting for you to leave, and then we're gonna
right.
really let you know how we feel about you.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, man. See you,
See you,
bro.
Dale.
Good night, guys.
See
You too, Dale.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, that was a
That was
good
awesome.
surprise. So we still haven't. I think the title of our thing should, for our seminar, should just say "Pull our string." We'll talk fishing.
Yeah, we could do it.
Yeah,
We're
I
like
think
the speak and spell or whatever the hell it is. Just pull our string, whatever it lands on. The three of us can talk about it. That's for sure.
we really only had this comment that pertains to this. Mario said, "It comes to mind how similar Kincaid, Egypt, Cedar, and Devil's Kitchen are as far as cover goes. Unlike Carlisle, Wren, and Crab Orchard are the same."
Yeah, I had to agree with that.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah, Carlisle and Wren, I'm familiar with. They're definitely a lot alike.
Crab's right there too.
Yeah.
Is it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Haven't been on it in a while, but
it's real
Carlisle
similar.
and Wren, if it comes up a foot, it goes out 100 yards kind of thing. You know,
Yeah, and then you look at Egypt.
It can certain areas for sure.
I think I don't know. See, there's some differences in Kincaid, Egypt, Cedar, Devil's Kitchen. Definitely Devil's Kitchen, because Devil's Kitchen is obviously it's quite a bit deeper. It's got a lot of standing timber in it. As Kincaid's got a little more standing timber, but not as much as Devil's Kitchen. And then Cedar and Egypt, there's not. There's some in Egypt. There's some stuff.
I don't have any experience on any of those lakes.
Okay. Yeah.
No, Carlisle, Wren, Crab Orchard. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're.
Yeah, those are. These Carlisle, Crab Orchard, and Wren are completely different than Kincaid, Egypt, Cedar.
Oh yeah.
They're
by far, yeah.
No grass to start.
No grass.
With.
Shallow, dirty.
A lot of mud, a lot of shallow.
Yeah, right.
Shallow water.
A lot of riprap.
Yeah. Are those lakes? I don't have a lot of experience, to be honest. I've got more experience on Crab Orchard than I do Wren, and nothing on Carlisle. But I know on Crab Orchard and Wren, they can be real spot specific. Like I know guys that have done good in tournaments where they've just fished like 100-yard stretch of riprap for 4, 5, 6 hours.
Yeah,
like just a certain section. I guess most lakes can be like that, but I've heard of how like location specific some of those lakes can be. I don't know if there's any truth to that, Eric.
Yeah, in my experience at Wren, if the water's not up in the bushes, and you're in a tournament, it's a race to riprap.
Okay.
At times,
I fished one bass tournament ever, and it was a couple months ago on Wren Lake. I don't remember the exact date. It was a big bass bash style tournament, but we had a side pot for biggest total bag, and there was every couple hours was a payout. And I actually ended up winning just about almost everything. I mean, we had a good day. I got pretty lucky, but I found the best fish in some offshore brush on the end of a point.
Are you kidding me?
No, that dropped off. and the brush dropped off into the deeper water as well, but the fish were staged up in the brush on top of the point on that hump. And I saw them with the live scope, and I saw there were some good fish in there. They weren't real active. They didn't want to bite. And I shrunk all the way down to one of my wintertime finesse jigs with a Strike King chunk. It was one of, what are they called? Dang it, I'm drawing a blank.
The Rage Chunk?
Rage Chunk, yeah. Rage Chunk. It was a green pumpkin. And with that, I even bit an additional 1/4 inch off of that. I downsized big time and just plucked through the brush, and caught the biggest fish of the day total. And hourly, we ended up winning the biggest total bag. We had the biggest fish, and but it was that area, and it held fish all day. I went back to that spot numerous times, and we ended up my buddy got broken off in that pile once on another good fish. And then there was one stretch of riprap that had some bass on it too. Out of all the areas we fished, those were the only 2 areas we could get bit.
How much water were you in that offshore stuff, Eric? 10, 12?
It dropped into 12 to 14, and the fish were staged up at about 8. They were about 7 to 8. And the brush kind of overhung a little bit on the drop off. But and there was a good bit of brush there.
Planted brush, it seemed?
What's that?
Planted brush, like man-made?
No, it was natural, and it might have been planted, but it was natural. But it was pretty good size. I mean, it was sizable. I think it was old. I mean, at one time that spot might have been out of the water years ago. I don't know. That was the first time I ever bass fished Wren. That's the only time I ever bass fished Wren.
I'm glad you don't fish tournaments now. If you do that, just show up.
Well, now I'm telling you, there was a lot of luck involved in that. My buddy was more familiar with the lake, and we hit a couple areas he wanted to hit. And he just asked me, he said, "What are you feeling? Where do you think the fish are?" And I said, I think we need something in 6 to 8, 6 to 10 foot of water, and I need there to be wood there. I said, "Do you know anywhere on the lake that's got some areas like that?" And he said, "Yeah, I do." And we went down and we found 3 spots down there. The first spot he took us, it had more minimal brush, but it had what we were looking for. And there was a couple fish, but they were like light biting it. I mean, they would not commit. And then I ended up finding that spot off that point, and that was it. That was the spot.
Very cool.
So
I remember going down there for a BFO, and I spent like 3 or 4 days the weekend before trying to prove that I could catch them offshore. And I sure as hell, this was before forward facing.
Yeah.
And I was priding myself in catching fish offshore at the time. And
well, there was a BFO that day. I think they had a 2-day, I think it was a BFO. It was a 2-day super tournament or
super. Yeah.
Whatever they called it. It was a 2-day. And my buddy, I was on the way home from that tournament, and my buddy, a friend of his, was fishing the BFL, and he called me and he said, "Dude, what'd you do?" He said, "I got a tournament there in a couple of weeks. Where'd you catch the fish?" And I was telling him, and he's like, "Dude, day 1 sucked for those guys." Like, I can't remember. I think he told me like 6th place had 8 pounds or something, man. And I'm like, gee whiz,
Sounds about right.
Yeah, it was, he said it was really tough. And that I just, like I said, it was one of them. I found the right spot. If anybody would have found that spot, I believe anybody could have did what I did. I wasn't nothing special. I just lucked into finding the right spot, and that happens a lot in fishing.
Well, a lot of people, Eric, wouldn't have kept downsizing their jig to get it that small in the summertime either, though. So you got to give yourself some credit there. No,
they wouldn't. But I mean, a couple of times getting picked up and dropped immediately. I mean, that's my go-to. Shrink down, see if I can get something they don't mind hanging on to long enough for me to put a hook in them.
Right.
So I'm thinking winter bass locations and bait selection. Something. I mean,
I like that.
boat control is always a good topic.
Okay.
No matter what you're fishing for, in my opinion. I don't care what you're fishing for, what species or what kind of body of water you're on. Boat control is always critical. And presentation and approach. I mean, so many people have no idea how to approach a deadfall or a brush pile, whether you're crappieing or bassing. I mean, there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. You approach a deadfall or a treetop out running out into the water. I mean, you don't go right for the core right off the bat and catch a
Get
fish,
hung up, be done.
or catch one and spook 3 or 4. I mean, people don't know you start on the outside edges and work your way in. You catch as many fish as you can. Or crappie fishing, when you pull up to a pile that's got 50 fish on it, don't drop down in the middle of them and try to catch one. You start at the top and the outer edges. Take the crust off, work your way in. You might be able to set on a pile and catch a whole limit, and unless you drop in the middle of it, catch a couple, and you've just spooked a bunch of fish. And most of the time, the better fish.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there's
trying to get to that
ways to do things.
Yeah, it's like a Tootsie Pop trying to get to that juicy center part eventually.
Yeah, exactly. Well, take that crust off. Get the outer layers of those fish caught.
Yeah.
You can catch so many more fish off of a spot that's loaded with fish if you do it the right way.
And if you see a juicy part of that, don't throw at it until you're in position to throw at it.
Yeah, and I tell everybody, don't pitch, don't cast, don't do anything until you're dead set, until your boat's right. And when you see that spot, don't cast on it. If you think a fish is sitting right there, don't cast right there and splash in there and spook.
No. I learned that years ago. Yeah.
Bring it to them. I mean, there was a few weeks ago, like 2 weeks ago, I caught a 7.5-pound largemouth out of pretty much a dead weed bed. It's still there, but it's pretty dead. But a week before that, I caught a 6.5 and a 6.10. I caught the 6.5 and 6.10, and we also caught a 5.5 right in the same spot. We never moved. I never took a step. I was fishing this weed bed on the outer edges, working it, and then went right in it. I caught the 6.5, the 6.10, never took a step. We went back a week later. It was colder, water temp had dropped a good bit, but I caught a 7.5 out of the exact same weed bed, standing in the exact same spot, off the bank on this lake we fish up here. Those fish relate to those spots for a reason, and there's more than one. If you fish it right, there could be more than one giant in there. You don't just catch one and think you've cast it. And and those are the things, like, I've really been trying to teach my daughter, Chelsea, and her boyfriend, Jordan. I've been trying to teach them how to break this stuff down, how to remember this stuff. And it forces me to fish really meticulous, because as I'm doing it. And like Gabe said earlier, it's when you're explaining something or showing something to somebody, if you can make it happen while you're teaching it or talking about it, they get it then. They say, oh my gosh, this works. He's not full of crap. Like, he knows what he's talking about.
Hey, there's something special about, let me add just one more thing here. But there's something special about fishing off the bank too. That specific scenario that you're talking about. A lot of times you're limited to the amount of openings that you can cast at. But even if you can fish the whole lake, it's a small body of water. You're controlled. Your environment is not moving. The wind's not pushing you around. You're stable, and you can literally fan cast and really dissect an area. And then when you catch a fish, you can make that exact same cast again.
Yes, you can.
And it allows you to slow down because
it does.
You've got a limited amount of real estate to cover in that day. You're like, this is what I can see in front of me. This is what I'm fishing today. There's no run down the lake, for 2 miles and fish this other cove that's in the back of your head.
Mm-hmm.
It's right there. So it allows you to slow down and figure it out.
I used to, when I fished off the bank, I always use a football jig as my depth finder first and feel what the bottom felt like.
Yeah.
Whether it was hard or soft or,
It's a good idea.
Yep.
I mean,
absolutely.
And I was going to ask Eric, did your daughter's boyfriend fish before he met your daughter?
Very little. He fished, but the success was very limited. And Chelsea used to fish with me a lot when she was younger, and she just, after working at Bluff City and stuff, she just got burned out. So she didn't fish at all for 2 or 3 years. And I had pretty much gotten out of largemouth fishing. I was concentrating pretty heavy on the crappie and some catfish and stuff and different things, And then they just went one day and out of the blue, because like I said, he had fished, but he didn't do real well, but he liked it. And they just went to one of the local lakes off the bank, and they had caught some fish. And she called me and she's like, "Hey, I can't believe I've been out of this." She said, I can't, I forgot how much I love this. And she asked me, she says, "We want to catch a big bass. Where do we go?" And I told her, I said, "Well, go up to the lake, And she hadn't, at that time, she had never bank fished it because it used to be open to boats. And I've spent the first 12 years of fishing that lake, fishing it from a boat. So I was able to learn a lot. Even though I didn't have my electronics then, I fished it so much I was able to really learn it. So I sent her up there, and they didn't do good at all. She, after a couple hours, they got back to the vehicle. She called me and she said, "This, it was terrible. We didn't do any good. We didn't catch nothing." And I'm like, "You went to where I told you, right?" She said, "Yeah, that's where we're at." I said, "Okay, look, don't leave." I said, "I'm going to tell you exactly where to go and exactly what to do. And you're going to call me back in an hour and tell me you wrecked them." And she's like, I hadn't even fished a lake for a couple of years myself, but I had so much time and history with it and a detailed log on that lake specifically for 3 years, almost on every fish I caught. So I told her where, what to do. And she said, "Okay, we're going for it." They walked it, went and hit it. And she did. She called me back and she was happy. She was excited that her boyfriend, Jordan, had caught one about 5.5 pounds,
Nice.
That was his biggest bass ever, So then I took him and ended up putting him on a 7-1. And this kid's hooked now. Hooked. And he listens and he pays attention. And if I like the day he caught the 7-1, I told them kids, I said, "There's going to be an amazing topwater bite, but it's going to be right before dark. So don't touch a topwater until I tell you. We don't want to give it up. We don't want to, educate the fish. We're going to surprise them when they're ready to hit it." And I had a rod set up with the lure tied on and everything. And when it got prime time, we got around to that side of the lake, and I told Chelsea, I said, "Go over there and grab that rod. It's time." And I said, "I want you to come right to this point and start here. And I want you to just start fan casting around this point." And I said, "Right out here, there's a stump and part of a dead tree laid on the bottom." And I said, "Start to the left of it, work across it. You're going to catch a big one right here." And I told her 3 times, and she was throwing a chatterbait and she was catching fish. And she said, "No, I'm throwing this. I want to keep throwing this." I said, "I'm telling you, go get this. You're going to catch a giant right here. I know you're catching fish, but just do this." And I told her 3 or 4 times. She wouldn't do it. And Jordan said, "Do you mind if I go get that rod? I'll try it." I said, "Absolutely, Jordan, go get that rod." Third cast, he caught the 7-1. Now, she wasn't mad. She was happy for him. Yeah. That was by far his biggest bass ever. But, he was so hooked. Now he's like an animal. They fished 3 times this week. They've been trout fishing the last 2 days, caught a 19.5 and a 19-inch trout and got their limits a couple days. They crappie fished the day before that. And one of the second trout day, they caught their limit of trout, left that lake, went to another lake, brought home a dozen crappie from there. So it was, they're into it. They're big into it. And Jordan, he listens, he pays attention. And when I take him, the whole time I'm talking, everything I do, every angle, every cast, every lure, I explain why I'm doing what I'm doing. And they listen, they pay attention, and now they can go fishing while I'm at home and they catch fish. They do pretty good.
Yeah. I always said that when I coached the high school kids, it refreshed my memory because they asked me so many questions about why I was doing what I was doing. I just do because that's what I've been doing. But then when someone stops and asks you questions, you got to think about, oh, well, explain why you do it. And it kind of refreshes your memory.
Absolutely.
It kind of it rejuvenates your interest in the why part, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And
it's
cool.
It
It is.
Come up and say hi. Yes, he is.
I think we got our topic then, like boat control and approach strategies. You know, like I was saying, if you're a tournament guy, don't go screaming to your first stop and throw your fucking trolling motor in like it's a bowling ball. You know?
Yeah, I think once we just start talking, it'll
happen.
Oh yeah,
but we got to have some
questions. Anybody wants to ask any questions or anything? I mean, like you said, between the three of us, I mean, they'll have a hard time stumping us. I mean, we ought to be able to share some good, helpful info, on no matter what the topic or what the species,
You leave like the last 15 minutes or something for questions. Is that typically
hell, anybody's got a question at any time, I would say.
Yeah. When I did the live scope seminars, I made it interactive. I actually took a buddy of mine has an ice fishing setup. I took it with me. I actually helped him set it up and dialed it in for him. So he let me take it with me. I put it on simulator mode. I had everybody come up and around, and I'd do adjust the screen and do different things and show them. And they was actually, without being on the water, able to somewhat see it working. And
that's cool.
Then I had a really good response out of that. I had a really good turnout on that one and the Marion show. So, I mean, it actually was pretty cool. It worked out pretty good. And everybody felt like, they got a good idea of how it worked.
Yeah. And you get one person asking a question, a guy that's kind of shy might feel like he can go ahead and ask this question.
Yeah. Or one guy might hit a question that 3 or 4 of them were thinking about that, nobody wanted to just, like you said, ask. But
right.
But I like to get the crowd involved, especially, I mean, if they can think of something right off the bat or something they need to know or want to know, I mean, absolutely.
Yeah, you're doing it for them. So whatever they want.
Yeah.
We can start out with one topic and end up somewhere completely different. That's fine.
Absolutely. But like Gabe said, I mean, between the three of us, we got quite a bit of knowledge. I mean, we can touch on
and different angles. Everybody's got a little different angle.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Me and you could go out, Eric, and you beat me but with 20 pounds and I have 19 pounds and we caught them completely different.
Oh, 100%. And that's one thing too. I'm glad you said that, because people all the time, it's what's the magic lure? What's the magic color? There isn't one. I said, watch the professional bass fishermen weigh in and watch the top guys. And I'm telling you right now, the guy that took first place, he was running crankbaits on ledges offshore and he was beating them up. And then you got another guy that was fishing, skipping docks, fishing shallow, off the bank brush and stuff. And he took second place and he's got a big bag. And then you got this other guy, he was running topwater in the back of creeks. It don't matter. You're going to see so many different patterns that worked. Find something that you're confident with. Confidence is everything. Yeah. And just go to work. There's not now sometimes I will say, yeah, okay, there's a specific color or a specific pattern. Those are the tough days. Those are the days that if you can figure out a pattern on those fish, you've earned them, but you're going to look like the hero. But most days, it's not the case. There's not a magic color. There's not a magic pattern to it. I mean, there's multiple patterns that could be had. A buddy of mine took me to a lake, and we right off the bat, he'd tell me how good this lake was at topwater, and he was right. The first hour and a half of the day, the topwater bite was phenomenal. I mean, we caught a lot of fish and quality. The topwater bite shut off. The sun got up a little bit, typical stuff. It quit. He kept throwing the topwater for a little while. I switched up. I thought the fish were still in the same general area. They just didn't want to come to the top. So I put a square bill on. I'm catching fish. He's not. And he wanted to go home. He said, man, the topwater bite's done. They're done biting. Well, I'm square bill and I'm catching fish. I said, they're not done. They just switched up. So then he switched up with me. We got on a really good crankbait bite till probably 10:30 in the morning. And he says, well, man, that was a good day. I think they're done. I said, they're not done. They moved. They switched up again. I said, we're going to go find some fish on a little deeper water on some brush, and we're going to worm fish them. We got on 3 solid patterns in a half a day. And I mean, killed them on the worm and caught quality again. He's like, that's unbelievable. He said, I've been fishing this lake for years. He said, I figured that pattern was the pattern. And when they were done, they were done. I'm like, they're not done. They move, they readjust. You know, you take the bait to them, they're still going to eat, you know?
Yeah. It might even be a completely different group of fish.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
I would say, like, I learned, I'm not going to take credit because I learned this from the Hibdons. It's like, a big brush pile is great, but one big log at a 45-degree angle, you could go there and catch a 5-pounder in the morning and then come back on the way and catch another 3-pounder in the evening that's moved in and set up on that log if it's in the right place.
What I tell people is those fish are wired a certain way. I mean, it's in their DNA. They're creatures of habit. They don't know why they do it. They just do it because that's how they're wired. It's in their DNA. When you find a spot that is continuously good or continuously produces big fish, it's going to keep doing it. And it's just because how those fish are wired. I mean, they don't know why they do it. It's just in their DNA. They're going to keep doing it.
I mean, here's a scenario, and we can we're always trying to relate animals to humans. I don't know. There's a word for that, a phrase for that, but we always think our dog is feeling the same emotions as we are. And some of them are, some of them do feel some emotions, but same scenario is you could be an observer in a park and sit on a park bench, and there's a nice mowed 5-acre lot with groups of trees, and you could sit and watch a car pull up, a boyfriend, girlfriend get out and walk to a certain tree, a certain shade tree, and sit down for 30 minutes and then leave. And you could watch another car pull up. And if you watch that all day long, I bet, I don't know if you just want to put a percentage on it, let's maybe go a little bit, extreme, but let's say 75% of those couples will walk to the same tree. For whatever reason, it's got the right amount of shade. And there may have been some other trees that could provide shade, but maybe the branches were a little bit too low and they had to duck into, and it wasn't quite as comfortable. It didn't have the field of view as that one tree. And I think bass are like that as well. Or a lot of fish are. They're cruising in through an area, and they find the prime piece of cover in that area, and they'll set up, especially a bigger fish. Smaller fish they may be more apt to just kind of hunker down around whatever, but a big fish, they're a lot more territorial. They're looking for a place to set up and make their home. It's got to have a decent location to, not always, but a lot of times if it's got a decent location to deeper water, but most importantly, it needs to have some kind of ambush point, and it's even better if there's a little bit of bait. But relating that to a human, I think all living creatures seek that best piece of cover, depending on where they're at.
100%. I agree with it.
And when you're talking about the lay down and picking them up, that's no different than a dock. The way you approach a dock, you don't want to go to the juice right away. You want to hit the outside edges first.
Yep.
Because if you catch a big one out from underneath a boat float, you might have scared the one that was sitting on the corner as you're bringing them out.
Yep.
But you could have caught the one on the corner first and then caught the one at the very back.
Absolutely.
So, and I don't know how many tournament guys I've seen, Eric, fishing with the wind at their back. I'm like, man, fishing, what I'm saying? You want to be fishing it. A, it's easier to control your boat for starters. And B, most of the time the fish are facing into the wind, so they're seeing it coming at them. It's not coming from behind them,
Yeah, I think boat control is a big thing with that wind. It's easier just to drift down with the bank, with the wind, especially if you're throwing a moving bait like a crankbait or a spinnerbait or something. And that'll work, but you really
it won't work as well as the other way.
If you want to get a couple casts at a good piece of cover, you're already past it before you can really.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, You can't meticulously pick something apart.
Right. And you end up making a bad cast. Like you're more likely to make not the perfect cast just because you're moving. Yep. You just kind of got to pick a cast and move on.
Yeah.
But when the fish are aggressive, yeah, that's the way to go. I mean, cover as much water as you can. But
but when you got to put it in their face and get them to eat it, you need to be able to slow down and fish every bit of that.
Yeah. I've learned too that fishing rocky banks, if you try to go 90 degrees, you're just going to get hung up more times than not. That 45 degrees or 30-degree angle, you can get it through there for whatever reason. So much better.
I love in big rocky banks and chunk rock and riprap. I love using my live scope, and they slope down into the water. Sometimes it'll run down into 10 foot of water, sometimes 5. I like to get up parallel to the edge of it and see if I can find what level those fish are on. If they're at the very bottom, which a lot of times they're right at that transition at the end of the rocks. And I will set my boat up right there. And I might be 10 foot off the bank. I might be 5 foot off the bank. And then I will run. I might be, say I'm fishing 8 foot of water. I'll run a 5XD in 8 foot of water, 7 foot of water. I'll run it down, hit the rocks, and then I slow it way down. I never set the hook. It doesn't get hung up as much as you would think it would. But that 5 or 6 XD, a lot of guys don't know this, but you could take like a 6 XD. I do a lot of it with a 6 XD, and even in the mud, you can pause a 6 XD and that thing sits there almost like a jerk bait for a long time. Mm-hmm. It does not come up. It's so slow. So you can, and guys think I'm nuts. They're like, hey man, we're fishing 8 foot of water. You got a lure that dives 20 feet deep. I'm like, yep, I do. And it's going to go, because I see where all the fish are. They're right at the bottom in that transition. They're within the bottom and a foot above. That's where they're going to ambush anything that comes near them. And I run that crankbait through there and wreck them. I'll fish behind guys all the time and can run that crankbait pattern and wreck them. It's just, I love it. And not just a 6XD. I'll use all different crankbaits, but I'll fish them in way shallower than what they run in the riprap. Just intentionally just beating it and crawling it through all those rocks. And I tell everybody, I'm like, never set the hook until you feel that fish actually on there kicking. Then, don't pop him, just swing into him because he's already got it. And I mean, I catch so many bass like that. That is such an overlooked tactic that it blows my mind, at least in my area. Mm-hmm. I've never ran across anybody else that fishes it like that.
Yeah. When I was saying the 45, I don't have live scope. So once I figure out what depth they're biting, you got to pay attention.
Oh yeah,
where you got bit, and you get 2 fish that are hitting you at the 5-6 foot off the bank. Then you need to put your boat 5-6 foot off the bank and go parallel at that point and keep it in the strike zone as long as you can.
Yeah. But if you're catching them on the jig in that chunk rock and riprap, you need to keep that 45 or close to it, or you're going to play hell getting through there.
Yeah, you're just going to get hung up. I don't know what it is, but you just are.
But you do that cold water, Eric, that crankbait thing. Does that work in cold water too, like in the 40s?
Yes, it does. It does, because with that 6XD, it sits there. I never had no idea it would sit there so long and rise so slow until I started fishing it on the scope. And the action is normal crankbait action, but the rise is jerkbait style. It comes up so slow. So your pauses are amazing with it. I mean, you can let that bait sit there a while and it comes up so slow. It's just, for a crankbait, it blows your mind. It's like, I never knew it would rise so slow, but it does.
Well, everybody forgets the old wiggle works used to come with suspend dots in the box.
Yeah. That's what I was getting ready to say. We were fishing a tournament probably 5 years ago in Egypt. And the rock crawler hadn't been out that long, and the water temperature was 41 degrees. And we fished we fished some really good looking stuff. It was the creek channel kind of swung in along this bank, and it had some flat rock and some old rope grass, some shoreline weeds that, you know, kind of barky stuff, and a lay down here and there. It looked really good, and we fished really slow through that area, and we couldn't get bit. And my buddy Jerry that I was fishing with, he starts throwing a rock crawler around behind the boat, and next thing you know, he catches one. It's 41-degree water.
Mm-hmm.
So we started throwing the rock crawler, and we were fishing in probably like 8 to 9 feet, and that bait was getting down to about 11. It's not as extreme as what you're talking about with 6XD,
but it still works.
A couple feet, diving deeper, a couple feet deeper.
Yeah.
And that's what we were doing. We'd make a really long cast. You know, we'd make 100-foot cast if we could. Well, 120, and get it out there pretty far, reel it down. And as soon as it hit the bottom, instead of grinding it,
flow way down,
we would just sweep it and
Yep.
just let it float up a little bit and just pull it like real slow. And then just get heavy. You get heavy and then you just pull.
I do that on a medium action rod too.
Yep.
Because you get that extra give in that rod, keeps it from digging into the crevices of those rocks. The whole combination, and like you said, slowing it, sweeping it, or just slow rolling it. Once you're in there, you feel the stuff before it buries, and that's where those fish are. They're up against those rocks. They're, you know, they got cover, they got ambush point. A lot of times those rocks are warmer. You know, they'll hold heat a little better. It works. It just works, and it's so overlooked, you know, or just not thought about. You know, fishing it like that.
Yeah, this was before live scope, but you could tell you were really close to the bottom, that it was rising really slow, because you'd cast, you'd reel it down, and you'd make good contact, and then you'd slow it down and you'd pause. But as soon as you crank the handle like 2 or 3 times, it was already hitting the bottom again.
Yeah.
So you know it wasn't floating up that far.
As long as you keep it moving, too.
Yeah.
Even if you're moving it slow, it's going to want to stay there.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that tactic before live scope. I just got a little better. I just didn't realize that 6XD was so slow at the rise and so effective. I just kind of got better at it, or perfected a little bit, you know, with the live scope. I got a better look. And one day I was fishing, and I was using a crankbait that dives about 7 foot, and I was fishing in anywhere from 1 foot to 5 foot deep on those rocks. And I was catching fish, but mainly shorts, you know, juveniles. And I come around a little bend, and then my boat lined up perfect with that ledge. And I saw those fish down there, and I run across them, and I was about 1 foot over their head, and I could see them. They wouldn't come up at all. And I switched and put a 5XD on. And in 20 minutes, I had 3 fish over 5 pounds right there.
Dang.
It was crazy. And they wouldn't come up at all. But when I put it in their face, they ate it. And I mean, identical cast. Those fish were all in the same group. Identical cast, pluck one, went back in, pluck one, 3 casts, 5 casts later, plucked one. It was just crazy. And 100%, I made that adjustment because of the live scope, because I seen those fish wouldn't come up. They wouldn't come up 6 inches for that bait. But if you drug it in the bottom and banged it off those rocks right in their face, they couldn't stand it. They had to hit it.
Yeah.
And every time it's on the pause, almost every time it was when it was paused and stopped.
Yeah. It makes sense too. That big bill is probably going to keep it from getting hung up in those rocks too, I would think.
And it does help. And then it's got like that 6XD. I think it's got like a 1 knocker. It's got something in it. It's heavy. I mean, you can throw it a country mile, but it lays down.
Yeah. I think, you know, a lot of situations where we think we should slow down and drag something, we should probably fish something that's more aggressive, something that's making. If the fish are not eating, then you got to make them bite. You know, you got to, a lot of times you got to trigger a reaction strike. And that's something that I've been working on, because my natural tendency my gut instinct most of the time is when the fishing is really, really tough, like in the middle of the summer when it's 95 degrees and humidity's, whatever, there's no wind, bluebird skies, and you just can't get a bite. I always want to downsize to like a small shaky head or a drop shot. Sometimes that works, but a lot of times going the exact opposite is the way to go. Like grinding a crankbait like super fast, making those fish bite. And
a big pattern I use right then is crankbaits on the suspended brush above the thermocline. Those bass will set up on the limbs of that brush above that thermocline.
Right.
And I take a crankbait and I'll run it right down and bang the limb and just stop. And I catch so many fish, and after slamming the limb, I'll slam it right into the limb and then just pause. And then they're not chasing it. Yeah, they're not chasing it, but I'm not asking them to. I'm taking it to them, putting it in their face. But another thing, like this summer, September, we caught a ton. Even July, we caught a ton of quality bass. It was August, Chelsea caught her 7.4. And we were fishing secondary points, and we were using chatterbaits and big worms, big 10-inch old monster worms. We caught so many quality fish on that big worm this year, which I have every year in the past when I fish that lake. But it's the secondary points has been really good to me that time of year. They're above the thermocline, but they still got access to a little bit of depth, and the fish just were staging up on them big time. We caught a lot of quality fish like that.
Doing something a little different than everybody else never hurts anything.
That's it. And that can be even using the identical lure. And you can do something. I don't care if it's a twitch of your wrist. I don't care if it's a slight pause in the cranking. I don't care what it is. If you can use the exact same lure as the guy in the back of your boat and do something a little bit different and catch all the fish, and he doesn't catch any. I've seen that happen numerous times, and it's just doing, like you said, something a little different than the next guy. Mm-hmm. And another thing that drives me absolutely nuts is if I have you in the boat with me, there is no you against me. If you're in my boat, we're on the same team. I want you to catch fish the same as I want to catch fish. We're going to work together. I'm not going to, at the end of the day, there's not going to be, I caught 5 and you only caught 1. That ain't how it works. We caught 6.
Yeah.
You understand? Like I hate that. It's such a competition with everybody. If you're in a tournament, I get it. If you're out fun fishing or just your buddies, like it's not me against you, man. If we went fishing, I was 100%. I'm not trying to outfish you. I'm trying to outfish the fish. It's me against the fish. If we're together, it's me and you against the fish. We got to put our heads together, figure out how to beat them, how to put them in the boat. I have had so many people in my boat at the end of the day would pout over me catching more fish than them. I mean, why even go if that's the case? I mean, I'm not hiding nothing. I'm telling you everything I'm doing or showing you. If you're in my boat, you have access to every bit of my gear. It's community. Grab it. I mean, I'll take the lure off my rod and tie it on yours if that's what it takes. I don't care. There's no competition in my boat. If you're in my boat, we're buddies and we're going to work together.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic, really, and I think that comes from some of that's ego, obviously, but it's just kind of the way we're brought up, depending on where, how we're brought up. You always want to compare yourself to somebody else. Like, how big of a buck did you harvest? Well, mine was a 10-pointer. Well, mine was a 12-pointer. Mine scored 140 and mine scored 150. But so many times, not all the time, but it's pretty regular that I'll hold up a picture of a bass, and I don't typically weigh my bass, but I'll hold up a picture and people want to know how big it was, and I don't weigh it. I just throw them back. I just tell them it's somewhere between 2 and 7 pounds. I don't know. It was a nice, good quality fish, but that's important to some people to know that exact weight, because they want to have caught one that's a little bit bigger. It'll make them feel better. Or maybe that's a caliber of fish that they hadn't caught, and that's on their bucket list is to catch one size. So it's just interesting how our minds work differently. And I guess some of that's, as you get older, that kind of stuff's not quite as important as it was when you were younger.
I agree with that.
Everybody else, and because that doesn't necessarily mean just because somebody goes out and catches a 7.5 pounder
doesn't mean they're better fisherman than you.
Yeah, it could be that. Now, if they're going out on a public body of water and they're able to duplicate that very often, like let's say 50% of the time they go out, they catch a 4 to 5 pound bass, and maybe a lot of those times they catch multiple. They're probably a pretty dang good fisherman. It's not just luck, but it's not uncommon for somebody just to catch a really nice fish. And that doesn't mean that they got to brag about it and they're the best fisherman in the neighborhood.
So absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you got to check yourself, because next week you might not be the best fisherman. That's so true.
That's one thing I learned. I used to, when I was younger, I wanted to be the best. I was real competitive. I wanted to be the best at it. And I would kept everything a secret, pretty much young and dumb, I realized there's no such thing as the best. There isn't. There might be the best today. And then the guy, you could have a 50 boat tournament, and the guy that took first place today, next weekend could get his butt kicked by the guy that took 50th place, the tournament later. There is no best. It's who had the best day today,
right.
Whose day was it? You're never going to be the best. I don't care what it is. You might have the best moment, but there's no such thing. I've changed gears. I'm not in competition with anyone. I help as many people as I can, because I see how people's faces light up when they get that bite or that bend in that rod. They feel that weight or that kick. I know how my face lights up. I've been doing this a long time, and I still giggle like a little kid when we get on an amazing bite or catch a good fish, or I watch my daughter catch her PB. I watch her catch her PB largemouth in 90-degree weather, and nobody else is out there at the lake. You know what I mean? Like, I love that. Like, and then she goes nuts. I want as many people to try to enjoy this stuff like we do.
Yeah.
And obviously I don't give them everything, but if you see some of my posts and some of my reports I put on, or posts I put on the Carlisle Lake report, I give more than enough. You can go out there with what I give you and catch fish.
Right.
Yeah.
I get it all the time. I've had people think that the year I won the championship and won that boat in a 3-day tournament at Lake of the Ozarks against just absolute hammers was like my proudest moment. And I'm like, no, Gabe will remember this. It was the BFL that I snuck in to day 2 as the last place in that super tournament. And, so first place co-angler goes with first place boater and on down the line. So my co-angler was in 26th place going into that tournament.
The last spot that slid in.
The last spot. And he ended up coming back and winning it. And I came back and got 4th, I think. And I had the fish on to actually win, come all the way back and win. But I didn't. So I always say to Tony on the radio show, you have no idea, if you don't bass tournament fish, that sometimes the guy in 6th or 7th was way closer to winning than the guy in 2nd. Because the guy in 2nd did everything right, didn't lose a fish. But the guy in 7th was real close, but he lost a couple key fish, And that day I lost 2 over 5 and could have easily came from dead last to winning. But my co-angler did. And that was the first tournament he'd ever won. And it was the first tournament he'd ever fished after his wife had just died with cancer. And that guy still stays in touch with me.
What a great moment.
Yeah. That's a moment that you shared that moment will never be shared with anybody. Nope. It's a moment that just happened, and that's a moment that you can't reproduce.
Hell, I was idling out. You have to be at the meeting in order to get a fish the second day, and I was idling out to go back to the house when Gabe yelled at me and said, "Hey man, I think you might have qualified. You want to come back?" And I went back up, and sure enough, I snuck in. And then that guy went out and came back and won the tournament the next day. It was pretty impressive.
It's awesome.
And like you said, I knew I had a shot, but I knew he had a real good shot, and I took him to a spot and let him make the cast at the juicy spot, and he ended up catching 2 really nice fish at the end of the day. And it was. I felt pretty proud that I put that guy on the fish to
Absolutely.
You know, I didn't hold any animosity that he got first and I got 4th or 5th or whatever it was. I was just happy that he did well. And that guy, awesome. Like I said, he still calls me and texts me, and we talk quite a bit. You know, it's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's the stuff it's all about.
Yeah,
it's like it's us against the fish, or when I'm fishing.
That's
it. I mean, I know that's cliche, but it really is. It's like,
but it is.
It's you against the fish. Can you figure the fish out? And then a lot of times, if I am fortunate to really dial in a pattern, I'll catch, a fair amount of fish doing that, and then I'll go try to see if I can catch them doing something else, just to see. I've already established that. Can I pivot off that and find like a secondary pattern or something? Because that's part of the fun and lure of it all, is just figuring out what the heck's going on out there. And that's, to me, that's the biggest accomplishment, is if you can get so dialed in that you can kind of call your shots, or you can put everything else away and just pick up one bait and just run to certain areas and get feedback all day long, or for however long you want to stay out there. That's what it's all about. That's when to me, that's the best thing. When I do that, it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does happen, it's like, yeah, I figured them suckers out today.
Yes, you did. That's awesome. I love that.
Right here in this moment, I know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps you coming back.
Well, I give credit to Marcus Sikora a lot for that attitude, because years and years ago, when I first started fishing Lake of the Ozarks, I was going down there as a co-angler, and I drew Marcus Sikora, the absolute, at that time for sure, was the hammer on that lake. And I was in the back of his boat, and I was new to jerkbait fishing, and I couldn't get a bite to save my life. And Marcus said, if I get my 5th fish, I'm going to back you in and tell you right where to cast, hand you my rod, and let you get a fish in the boat or 2. And I was like, Marcus, I can't let you do that. What if you lose by a pound? And he looked right at me and said, I make my living selling insurance, not bass fishing. And my reputation means way more to me than me getting second over first.
That's awesome.
That's good stuff.
That is. Yeah. And that's how I want to be known, as the guy that wants to help people out.
I mean, that stuck with me, man, when he told me that. It's like, and I've defended that guy so many times for people that think, oh, he's arrogant, he's this, he's that, he's cheating, he's planting brush. I was like,
well, he's good at what he does, and people are jealous.
Yeah, he's Tom Brady. He's good. He's good looking, and he's good at what he does, and people are jealous of that.
That happens in this industry so much.
Yeah, I told Marcus that too. I think I told him, you're the Tom Brady of bass fishing. You're handsome and you're successful, and people hate you for it. I mean, you got a good looking wife, you got a good looking kids, you got the whole 9 yards. But if you fish with the guy and spend some time talking to him instead of just talking shit from a distance, you realize, no, he's a really good dude. You just looking at it from an outside looking in. Hell, I've seen people don't want to fish tournaments at Lake of the Ozarks because the Hibdens are there and Marcus. It's like, you're not fishing against them. You're fishing against the fish.
Yeah.
I went down, and when I first started going there, I was coming from Illinois. I'd be catching 12, 13, 14 pounds thinking, oh, I'm going to do great. And I come in and don't even get a check. And I just had to re-gear. No, you need 19 or 20 pounds or you ain't. That's just what it is. You got to figure out how to catch that. So you got to change what you're doing, because it's you. It's not that those guys are better than you. It's you're not doing something right. You got to change what you're doing.
Back to what you were saying, Eric, about the joy and happiness you get from putting somebody else on fish and seeing their reaction. That's some of my most memorable fish catches, are watching my daughter catch her first fish on an underspin with a little swim bait and just seeing her, the rod bow up, and I'm way more excited. She's excited. Yeah. I'm like next level excited just seeing that and watching that all go down. Or
putting my wife on when we got on a pretty good drop shot bite, and they were biting, they're biting a drop shot. Just those are the days that I really enjoy, watching somebody else experience something that they don't get to do very often, or they tried and not been able to achieve it, and then you help them achieve something that brings a lot of happiness. To me, that's the good stuff, man. That's
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. My son Miles, when I took him to table rocking, he was like 12 or 13, and he caught 4 keeper smallmouth in like 40 feet of water. And I was like, dude, I was a grown ass man before I ever caught a fish out of 40 foot of water. You should be very proud of yourself.
Yeah.
Not everybody can catch fish out of 40 foot with a football jig in their hands. It's like,
no kidding.
Yeah, well, and he would do, Eric, he was hooked at that point. It was
that's just all, yeah, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, you get 4 keeper smallmouth in one spot in 40 foot of water. That'll get you coming back for sure.
Oh yeah.
I did one time. I did a couple guide trips just on the side of Egypt, and they were just, I took somebody fishing. Let's leave it at that. But these guys had never really caught fish offshore, and it's kind of like when you see a light bulb go off on somebody's head because they catch fish in an area that they never fished before. They didn't even really think about fishing. We were out way out in the middle of nothing, just way out.
It looks like you broke down out there. Yeah.
Yeah. And we were catching some fish, and because I remember when that happened to me, when I started exploring offshore and catching fish out there, and I'm like, wow, this is like a whole new plane. It's like a whole new horizon out here, because I was conditioned to throwing at cover and throwing at the bank and stuff. That's just how we grew up. But when you move off away from everything and you start having some success and figuring some stuff out, it's like, it just changes everything. It just, it's just the light bulb goes off. And then when you're in the boat, when you're in the boat with somebody and you see them experience that for the first time, it's pretty cool. It's really cool.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
It's very cool. And typically a lot of that offshore stuff, it's not beat up.
No.
You get fish that maybe ain't seen a jig or a lure in a long time, and they're eager to bite. You can have some phenomenal days on fish that, they're untouched,
Yeah.
Yeah. There's more people that do it now, but it's still not, the majority of the people still gravitate to the shoreline.
Visible cover.
We're visual creatures, and we want to see what we're throwing at. It's just the way it is.
Carlisle, one of the to most of the people, Carlisle, one of the most popular areas in there is Peppenhorse.
Peppenhorse, yeah.
And it's because it's full of standing timber, and you can see a lot of it. And it draws so many people. This time of year on the weekends, there'll be so many people in there crappie fishing that it's crazy. And everybody's like, you fish Peppenhorse? I'm like, no, I don't. If I go there during the week sometimes and there's no boats in there, I might go in there and fish it. But on the weekends, it's like bumper boats. I'm not going in there. Like, they don't need one more boat competing with them for those fish. And it's like a lot of the guys, they don't have the live scope or whatever. They're used to fishing that area because they can see the cover,
Right.
And I avoid that, for multiple reasons. But I don't want to compete with them, and I don't want to play bumper boats either,
Right.
Because there's a lot of good fish in there, but it might be 1 or 2 on this tree and 1 or 2 on that tree. So to be real effective, you got to move around quite a bit. You got to bounce around from tree to tree and pluck those good fish,
Mm-hmm.
But like the other day, whenever I did a video Saturday, I went out to Carlisle and fished a couple hours in the morning in that snow, and it was cold and snowy. To me, a great day to be winter crappie fishing. But I did a little video, and then I turned, like, if you watch the video, you can tell I'm in the middle of the lake. Like that, you can't hardly even see any bank. I'm in the middle, but I'm offshore fishing structure, and these fish haven't seen. They haven't seen no jigs, and I don't know how long.
Yeah.
And another thing I look for too when I do that is if you can find the smallest stuff out there most guys miss it on their side scan.
Mm-hmm.
It's small, it's short. Sometimes it's a stump on the bottom, or even just a log laid on the bottom out in the middle of nowhere. That, I mean, that lake, that whole lake, I mean, they just flooded it. I mean, it was timber, it was agriculture. I mean, so
Yeah, what do you call it? Field roads and stuff out there.
Yeah, that you find that small isolated stuff. And even though guys are fishing offshore, a lot of them are still overlooking it. They're missing it. And when you can find that stuff, like I said, you're not going to pull up to one of those spots and bang a limit, but you'll pull up to one and you'll catch the fish of the day. You'll pull up to another one and catch another big fish or two big fish. It's
very rewarding is what it is.
It is.
That's the beauty of live scope. The beauty of live scope is there are so many pieces of cover that you've idled past with side scan that you didn't pick up. And then when you got your trolling motor down and you're out there looking around, there's a stump here that you didn't know was there. There's a stump here. It's amazing. It blows me away. Like areas that I've fished for years and years, and I've kind of halfway thoroughly scanned and thought I knew most of the things that were in there. You still find stuff with that live scope. It just picks it up. Like you said, a little stump that's sitting a foot off the bottom. When you're 100 feet out or 80 feet out, you're not going to really pick that up on side scan.
You're not going to pick that up.
You're just not. But when
you better have a seriously good unit, or you better be amazing with that side scan, because you will overlook it. And then I find areas, and then like I try to do a lot of scouting. I've done a lot of scouting on Carlisle, and I have hundreds of waypoints on stuff on Carlisle. And when I find stuff, I do just what Gabe was just saying. When I drop the trolling motor in and I'm fishing these spots, I will scan that area again with my live scope while I'm fishing. I will hit the stumps that I found or the little structures I found, and then I will scan out around the area and I will find more stuff and I'll mark more waypoints. It's small, but you could find an area that has small enough stuff that they've overlooked every bit of it on side scan, but there's enough stuff to pluck a fish or two off each one and catch a limit of big quality fish when maybe nobody else on the lake's even catching fish.
A lot of times they'll move off of that obvious stuff into the little smaller stuff.
The bigger fish especially, and especially crappie. The bigger crappie, they don't like a crowd. They'll move off. They like to be by themselves.
I got a really dumb question as a guy that doesn't have live scope yet. So if I look at a brush pile with live scope, can I mark it on that live scope? Can you reach out and touch your screen and mark a waypoint on it?
It depends on what unit you have, but you have to switch screens. You'll have to switch to your home screen to hit mark. Mark won't physically be up on the live scope screen. It'll just show your live scope. But that's why the 2 units are beneficial. And when it comes to waypoints, I think the Garmin is the easiest to mark and navigate back to those waypoints. It's way easier, in my opinion, than my Humminbird. It's effortless. It's one touch to mark them, and then to navigate back to them, it's simple. It's very, very user friendly. But like I said, the Humminbird, in my opinion, has better side scan.
Yeah, I know 360, the Humminbird 360, your waypoints can actually show up on the screen. If you mark a waypoint, you can see it on the 360. But what
that would be cool. I've never messed with the 360.
Yeah, and Mike, I got a 12 at the tiller, a Lowrance, and then I've got a Lowrance 9 up front, and then I've got a 1022, just a standalone Garmin for the live scope. So any of the waypoints that I've marked, I see them on my 9-inch Lowrance right there. And as long as I'm within, I typically have my range set out at 80 feet with my live scope. And as long as I'm within 80 feet of that waypoint, I can see it on the live scope. And that's kind of how I do things. And I don't really even when
when I'm loading up my new boat, when I'm putting graphs on it, I could be just fine with a 9-inch graph up there because I don't even really use it other than waypoints. That's the only thing I use it for. I don't really use it for downscan anymore. I'll use it for map contours a little bit, but it's really just to locate waypoints. You know, it's unfortunate that I guess that sounds kind of, I don't know. It's
the majority of my
different.
second unit up there is the same. I mean, it's the same function you're talking about.
Yeah.
Unless, like Carlisle, I will use it because Carlisle is a river system. So I use the river channel a lot for white bass months before they're catching them on the humps and stuff, or, you know, just crappie in a transition, or, you know, the river channel plays a big role in how the fish use that lake. And like Grenada,
Dustin?
Grenada, I use it big time. I use there's a river channels in Grenada Lake too. And I mean, I follow those river channels and I use that mapping on that. I mean, the whole time when I'm down there.
Yeah. Well, people don't talk about that enough. They talk about live scope changing the game. Well, mapping changed the game big time. When you can just physically look at a contour map sitting in your garage and figure out a couple spots you want to go check out, and then run right to them and be right on them without having to search for them like you used to have to do.
I'll tell you some very funny, like exactly what you're talking about. I got a good buddy, and he's a phenomenal crappie fisherman. He had a tournament coming up on a lake in Alabama, and he had never been on the lake, never seen the lake, but he was on Google Earth. He had Google Earth up on his tablet. He was in his garage in his boat. He had mapping up on that lake, and he was studying the map of the lake, studying Google Earth, studying the terrain around the lake. He had 52 waypoints saved on that lake before he left his garage. He went down there and he won first place in that tournament. I mean, he's a very good fisherman. He knows what he's looking for all the time. I swear I think he knows what the crappie are going to do before they do. I mean, he's a good fisherman, but it blew my mind. I watching him do that in the garage, and then, you know, him going down there, you know, him telling me about the tournament and watching him research it and then going down there and winning it. I mean, like I said, he had like 52 waypoints before he left his garage. And it was phenomenal because he'd never even been on that lake.
That is pretty crazy.
Yeah. And it was,
I did something similar.
Like Mike said. It's just like Mike said. The technology's there and the mapping is so good. And I mean, he knew what he was looking for. And when he looked at the mapping and how it broke down the contours and the creek channels and river channels and everything was labeled, he knew everywhere he wanted to go. Then he went down, pre-fished it for 4 or 5 days before the tournament. And then, confirmed everything he learned in the garage was true and won it.
Yeah, the thing about Google Earth too is you can flip through the history of those aerial photos and find when the lake's low or when it's high and see things. You can
see a lot of things, and mainly like creek channels, and you can see the terrain. You can tell, you know, where the steep banks are from the terrain on the edge, and
transitions and stuff.
Yeah, you can see, so you can learn so much from it.
Yeah,
and most guys do not even think about that. I mean, the average Joe is never thinking about that, and most legit fishermen, you know, aren't thinking that deep into it.
And a lot of the physical cover, you know, you can look on a map if you're pretty good and you've got a good map, like it's got 1 foot contours. You can, you know, you have an idea of maybe what kind of, not always, but maybe what kind of structural, or not structure, but cover as far as rocky transitions, clay, that kind of stuff. But what a map doesn't show you is laydowns or blowdowns or tree falls. But Google Earth, you can see the back of a cove. Man, that cove's got a bunch of laydowns.
And that's exactly, he had the whole deal, the tablet up, his maps up on the screen. I mean, he was using it all, and he's like, it all was hand in hand. And he said, I'm going to have a game plan. And that's what it's all about, especially on that level. You've got to have a game plan. And I mean, he had a solid game plan.
Yeah. That's impressive.
And that's the thing too, like I said, with Google Earth, if you flip through the different years, you might find an aerial photo from a day when it was dead calm, and you can see into the water from that aerial photo.
Yeah, you can see the stumps, like all the way in the back of a cove. You can see like
it wasn't windy that day, and you can, especially if you look at like Table Rock Pool Shoals, even like in the Ozarks, they're a little bit clearer than most places.
Yeah,
you or there's see always a big boulder.
There's always two boats on this one point. Like every
year,
two boats. Might be a spot you might want to check out.
For real,
that looks like Dell's boat on that point right there.
Exactly.
You stalk him with the Google Earth.
Yeah.
Start sending him aerial photos of his boat. Talking about,
hey, I got an idea, Gabe. When you go down, when you and JB go down with Dell, you need to put one of those air tags in underneath his rod locker somewhere so you can keep track of where he's at.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. That'd be dirty, wouldn't it?
That would be dirty.
Worst guide prank ever.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
You get your $500 out of the trip that way for sure.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Dell's a good dude, man. We had a lot of fun down there.
Yeah, he seemed like he was.
Yeah, he's fun. He's got some unique ways of finding fish. He's got his 2D set up where he can run on pad to locate shad, and he'll go back in those coves. You're running like 30 miles an hour, but his 2D's still pinging fast enough to where when you run over shad, that's where you need to set the boat down and kind of look around. But he'll go back. He looks like he's had about, I don't know, like a case of beer driving through, because he's zipping all through those coves trying to locate shad. And if you just go straight through the middle of it, they got to go under the boat on that 2D, right? But if you just go straight through, you're going to miss stuff to the right or to the left. So he just swerves all over the place. He looks like he's drunk. And sure enough, he finds what he's looking for. He sets down, puts the front looker down, has a look, finds the shad, and then commences to catching fish. But he's got a system, because Bull Shoals is a big lake. I mean, it's like 50,000 acres or something. So you got to have a system to break that stuff down, and he's definitely developed that over the years. He's a good guy. Yeah, anybody that wants to go experience Bull Shoals, look him up, man, for sure. He's fun times.
That's awesome.
Well, cool. I'm gonna wrap. We're gonna shut this down. My daughter just texted me, and she's getting ready to go to bed, and my wife's out of town, so I gotta run up there and say goodnight to them before they hit the sack.
Yeah, we've only been on for 3 hours, Gabe. We're like a Joe Rogan podcast length.
It went by quick. I mean, I felt like we could go another 3 hours. We're talking.
It went by quick. We get to talking about this stuff. I mean, this is what we live for. I can never shut up.
It's fun.
So I guess the title of the seminar should just, like I said, just pull our string. That's all you got to do.
Yeah.
So
Q&A, anything like that.
Yeah,
all right, guys.
All right, man. It's great.
Right, appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out.
Yeah. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Yeah.
Later.
See you, boys.